Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if issei Returning Welsh Dragon Hero and Harem Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. If you like to hear adult version of this and other stories, I'll give you link of my Patreon. Go support and follow the Silver W. King for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Let's start this video. Rias Gremory can't really say she's the most proactive of a person, or devil in this case. She tended to take her time when dealing with an issue, only acting decisively once she's made up her mind. She tended to be playful, and more relaxed in her approach to things, unlike her best friend and co-supervisor of Co-Town, Sona Citri. That's why when she first learned about a fallen angel in her territory, she didn't immediately jump the gun and attack them. She let them be. They could be just one or two fallen, or even a small group, just passing through Ko on their way to somewhere else. It wasn't something that seemed like a big deal, that she would want to react by calling her brother or Sona's sister, the current Satan Lucifer and Satan Leviathan respectively. Sure, this might be under the preview of Seraphal, Satan Leviathan, as she was the underworld minister of foreign affairs, but it might just be nothing but some fallen passing by, and result in Rias looking like she overblown things and overreacted. She didn't want to bother her brother or Seraphal for something like that, or look like she can't handle a simple fallen situation and was scared of dealing with a group of two-winged fallen, given her familiar's report. Speaking of her familiar, Batty, upon sending our flyers with her devil summoning contract on, came back and told her about issei Hayato going on a date with a fallen angel. Initially Rias was worried, and given that she only found that out late at night, she decided to wait to the next day to see what had happened. Thankfully issei did show up the next day to school, so it seemed like there was nothing to worry about. The fallen likely just wanted her itch scratched, and used a well-known pervert for it. At least issei got to have fun, hopefully, and unless his memories of the date were wiped, he was likely to spend the entire day bragging about having lost his virginity. That didn't happen, so likely issei's memory of the date were erased, and physically he seemed fine, so all's well that ends well. Especially since Rias had wanted to invite him to her peerage eventually. She just needed the right strategy for it. Yes, she was procrastinating, just a tiny bit, but it's not like issei was going anywhere. However, things then happened and really worried Rias. It started with her rook, Kaneko. The cat girl turned devil, upon passing issei in the school's hallway, stiffened and froze and all the blood left her face. Thankfully Kiba acted quickly, taking her away, before anyone noticed and caused a scene. When Rias met her later and asked her what happened, Kaneko said that while before issei smelled a bit like a dragon, now that scent and aura were overwhelming. It was like standing next to an apex predator, a king of beasts. Once Kaneko calmed down, he added that issei's aura was held back, not forcibly like someone struggling to hide their power, but someone doing so with relaxed experience. That made Rias blink in intrigue and a bit of worry. So something happened in that date with the fallen to result in this, obviously, but what, and why did it change issei to this extent? Thus Rias had assigned her peerage to look after issei for the day, while having Kaneko go scout out the fallen in the town and get more concrete information on them. Issei was definitely different than his usual self. Almost as if who he was the day before was a completely different person. For one, he seemed too sluggish and lethargic even when his friends suggested they peep on the Kendo Club members, which was made up of only girls, as they changed after training. The class actually went silent and stared at issei in shock when he tiredly, with his head laying on the table, said he didn't feel like it. Many exclaimed that the world might be ending, or that Hayato had been replaced by an imposter. Seeing reaction to his innocent remarks, and his friend acting like he was dying, issei relented and the students of Class 2B went back to what they were doing, as the natural order had been restored. Yet when the perverted trio went about their usual routine, issei didn't actively participate in the peeking or even seemed that interested. Only acting like he wanted his friend to let him have a peek, just so they don't remark like he wasn't being himself. Then when the girls naturally discovered the three boys, and ran after them with Shernai to punishment, issei wasn't running for his life like his friends, but jogging. His pace easily faster than the trained Kendo girls. Rias Knight, who was watching issei, Even noticed that issei was instinctively dodging the shurnai sweeps, before realizing he was doing so, and consciously let the girl's shurnai reach and hit him, so he'd continue to act normal. Something was definitely off with Issei Hayate. At the end of the day, Kaneko came back and reported that a group of fallen angels, 4 in total, all two-winged and what seemed like a squad of stray exorcists, had made base in the abandoned church at the edge of town. Kaneko wasn't sure on the number of stray exorcists, but they likely numbers a dozen or so. She couldn't be sure, and she didn't want to get too close and be discovered. Putting Issei and his new odd behavior out of her mind at the moment, Rias contacted Sona with her findings. The next day Issei came to school with a yellow-page phone book. It was something that he looked through between classes and spent the entire lunch break reading through. "Do you need help with that, Grandma?" Issei's friend and fellow pervert, Matsuda, said. "Why do you have a phone book? I didn't even know those were still around." The other pervert of the trio, Motohama, said as he adjusted his glasses. "There's a second-hand bookstore that still keeps copies. They're pretty cheap." Issei said nonchalantly, not taking his eyes off the yellow pages, as he perused the book, with a slight frowning expression. "Hayate, you better not be using that to call girls and harass them," shouted one of the girls in class. "Of course not," said Matsuda back. "What the hell is the point of calling girls? You can't see them." "Wait," Motohama said with sudden realization. "Are you looking up the numbers of porn actresses?" "Issei, you genius!" shouted the glasses pervert known as the 3 sizes scouter. "My god, that is some 3D chess thinking, Issei," Matsuda said in awe. "What the heck? No, I'm not doing that. I'm just looking for, like hell will allow you to harass innocent women. You trying to contact TT those kind of women, that's even worse," said one of the female classmates. "Oh, and why the hell do you care, B44W50H72CM? Motohama immediately cried out. "Kaya!" the girl in question shouted. Other girls argued with the perverts. Motohama and Matsuda argued back. Then things got physical, with some of the girls trying to take away the phone book, with Motohama and Matsuda trying to take it back. Issei actually tried to calm things down, and just wanted to get his book back. But naturally amidst the fighting it got torn up. Issei looked pouty for the rest of the day, which some girls said he deserved it. And some secretly thought he looked cute like that. Kiba, that witnessed the whole thing, could only wonder who Issei was looking for. A girl with the last name Fujimaru. Who could she be? Thought Kiba. The week passed by with a sort of new norm about Ko Academy's perverted trio. It was something that most of the student population who already had a negative view of the perverted trio didn't notice, but some still took note of. Issei Hayate wasn't acting as much of a pervert as he usually did. Oh sure, he still discussed boobs openly with his friends. He still talked about his dream of being a harem king. Yet, to any that actually paid attention to the boy, he didn't seem to have his heart in it. In Rias Gremery's eyes, his heart wasn't in it. Yes, Rias may have been a lax devil when she dealt with things, but that didn't mean she wasn't observant to changes in people. Especially trauma. She couldn't afford not to be, when her peerage was basically a walking list of physiological diagnoses. She may not have been able to help her peerage members from their tragic pasts, whom she considered family, but she could provide the next best thing. A stable, happy home. She had tried. Oh, she had definitely tried to help them. Akino, Kaneko, Kiba, Gasper. She gave them all the love, support, and tools needed to heal them of their emotional scars. She had the best therapist in all the supernatural world on speed dial if they needed. While it wasn't in her ability without pulling on her brother's influence, she would even try to get a Buddha to help them. However, any attempt to help was stopped by a roadblock that her brother taught her about. The bitter lesson that people that don't want to be helped can't be helped. Thus the next best thing Rias could give her peerage was love and attention. It also meant she learned when a change in someone's mood or behavior was just something temporary, or something more lasting. Issei Hayate definitely had the characteristics of someone that went through a life-altering event. Not traumatic, probably. At least not as she first suspected, but he definitely gives off the signs that something major happened to him. Rias just wasn't sure what. Akino had teased her that she had been observing Issei more closely lately, that had ventured onto stalking. Rias playfully slapped her friend's shoulder at the remark, but she couldn't help it. Rias just felt like she should be concerned about the change in issei. Even if it was irrational, he was someone in her territory, so kinda her responsibility. And he's someone she wanted to invite into her peerage in the future, so kinda more so her responsibility. Mao, can't I just find someone with a normal childhood and no tragic backstory? Rias thought. Was this maybe a sign from that universe that now she could approach issei and recruit him but not before? As she usually had taken to do these past few days, Rias would watch issei through her familiar's eyes, whenever she was relaxing in the day, done with paperwork, and feeling bored with nothing to do. No new anime seasons caught her interest, and no trips to ancient Japanese landmarks were coming soon, so why not observe issei some more? Just for his safety, really. Rias blinked as she watched issei stumble into meeting a nun. The nun clumsily fell and her bags broke open to throw her clothes onto the street. Issei helped her out, however, when Rias expected some comedic shenanigans due to a language barrier. As the nun was Italian, Issei shocked her. Sorry, I know little Italian. Rias' eyes bulged out as Issei spoke Italian. Do you know English? I can speak that better. Issei spoke in fluent English. Oh, thank the Lord, the nun, Asia, as she introduced herself, spoke in relieved joy. Yes, I can speak English. I'm glad the Lord deemed to send you my way, Mr. Issei. Just Issei, Asia. Mr. makes me sound old. Issei jokes, to which Asia smiled and giggled back at him. As the duo walked and talked for a while, stopping by a fast food restaurant for a quick lunch, Asia asked what made Issei interested in learning Italian. Oh, a friend of mine knew it and taught me a bit. I heard people like to hear others speak in their native language, so I tried to do that, he said back. And as the boy with the dragon's sacred gear and the nun, apparently with twilight healing Rias, saw the girl heal a young boy who scraped his knee playing around, Rias had one thing going through her mind. What friend of Issei's speaks Italian? The meeting between Issei and Asia ended on a surprising note. Rias had sent a keynote to find out about this nun, and it turned out she was a pretty famous saint who got excommunicated for healing a devil. Okay, it was clear the Fallen were here for something nefarious, which was later confirmed when Kaneko returned saying she saw one of the stray exorcists staking out the home of one of their contractors, with a crazed look. It was time to deal with those fallen and stray exorcists right away. Them having the ex-nun with the healing sacred gear might be a problem, but Rias and Sona along with their peerages would just have to deal with it. However, unlike what Rias expected, once Issei and Asia reached the edge of town, where the abandoned church was in sight, Issei didn't let Asia go. Asia, sorry, but that place is no good. It's abandoned, and I've heard bad rumors about it. The people who sent you the location are either mistaken or playing a cruel prank on you. Issei took out his cell phone. You're staying with me and my parents until your situation is figured out. Come on, let's go. Issei took Asia's hand in one of his own, and with the other called his parents. Asia protested but didn't seem too against Issei's decision, and with a small smile to hide her happiness went along with the boy. Unexpected, but that's probably good, Rias thought. If the nun wasn't with the Fallen, that makes things much easier, as they could just launch an all-out attack. Then something crazier happened. As Rias and her peerage prepared to head out at sunset to assault the Fallen and drive them out, Batty alerted her of Issei heading to the abandoned church. Panic filled Rias as she and her peerage rush out and teleported as close as they can to the church, before flying the rest of the way. Issei entered the broken-down church casually, just ducking under the door, leaning half down with one broken frame, and walked in. His attitude was so relaxed that the stray exorcists didn't even notice him till he just stood in the middle of the church, with his hands in his pockets, looking at the Fallen, discussing someone among themselves. The healing bitch should have been here by now. Where the hell is she? Yuma shouted out in frustration. Someone local seemed to have taken her, from what the minions said, said a Fallen in a trench coat. Who's he? Asked the blonde lowly Fallen, who was the first one to not just notice but call out at Issei's presence. That's him, one of the stray exorcists shouted. That's the guy the Twilight Healing was walking around with. Well, said a silver-haired stray exorcist with a crazed look and bloodlust oozing out of him. Aren't you the Balza one, just swaging around here? So where's the nun? You didn't play with her too hard, did you? Fried Selzen laughed to himself. You! Rainier shouted upon noticing issei. How the fuck are you alive? I stabbed you clean through the stomach. Wait, that the boy you played house with and killed? Doesn't seem like you did a good job, said a tall Bustafallen. Shut up, Calawarner, Rayonra said back. That just mean I have to be more through this time, she said with a malicious look as she made a spear of light, holding it threatening. Unless, maybe you can change my mind by telling me where the nun is? Did you kidnap her to spite me? Do you want me back, issei-kun? She said playfully before laughing out loud with cruelty. Throughout it all, issei calmly stood in the center of the fallen space with his hands in his pockets. His relaxed pose and uncaring expression was making some of the wiser stray exorcists set on edge. Even some of the fallen, like the one in the trench coat, Downasik, took a more battle-ready stance in wariness. You know, issei finally spoke. I'm glad you're all exactly as I expected, and it's not just you that's the crazy bitch, Yuma. Huh! Rainier shouted vilely. That way, power began to surge and rise within issei, enough for an emerald aura to envelop him. I can just destroy you all without worrying about someone innocent getting caught in the blast. The fuck do you think? Fried began to say. Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker. The power that was building up exploded into draconic might, the aura washing over the building, terrifying everyone, stray exorcists and fallen angels to their knees, from the sheer weight of issei's power. The boosted Rainier only had a moment to realize her error. Issei in his crimson armor looked at Yuma and the fallen apathetically. He held hand facing down, and a red energy sphere formed under his palm. By Dragon shot. A beam of concentrated magical energy burst from sphere downward into the floor. Rias and her peerage arrived in worry about issei's suicidal confrontation with the fallen group. They were flying and the abandoned church was now sight. Rias desperately hoped she wasn't too late. A shining red light erupted from the church windows and door, before a beam of crimson energy erupted upward and outward, engulfing the whole of the church. The light caused Rias to cover her eyes, and the shockwaves resonated outwardly, sending strong winds had Rias hold her arms up to protect herself. The Gremry Devil and her peerage were forced to land, and make a magic barrier around themselves to protect from the violent magical energy explosion. A moment later it was the energy died down, and Rias saw what was left of the church, a crater, with issei standing in the center. The church was no longer there. Rias saw a crimson gauntlet on issei's left arm. Rias, that's Akino pointed out, but Rias already knew. The boosted gear. Issei had a sacred gear that was listed as one of the 13 strongest there were. A Longinus. Issei dismissed his sacred gear, and as he turned back to walk home, Rias and her peerage landed close by in front of him, making him blink. Rias senpai? Akino senpai? He noticed them first, before noticing Kiba and Kaneko, mentally acknowledging their presence. Issei, Rias began warily, trying to find out an explanation to all of this. What happened here? As she looked, the boy with the red dragon sealed in his soul, all Rias saw was someone who looked apathetic. Tired. Not physically. He didn't look even winded. Heck, his clothes weren't even ruffled by this battle, if it even could be called that. Yet there was now a heaviness to his eyes that he didn't bother to hide, unlike when he was at school. What happened to you? Rias thought. Because the sudden change within what was formerly an energetic and excitable perverted teen. 1 week ago, after Issei's date with Rainier, Issei Hayato was lying on the ground of the public park, with a hole in his stomach, bleeding to death. He was been stabbed by a fallen angel named Rainier, pretending to be a girl with a crush who asked him out. As he laid there on the ground, he closed his eyes with his last thoughts being about wishing he had been bold enough to touch Yuma's boobs, Yuma being what Rainier called herself. It was a story that was seen 1,000 times. The beginning of the tale of Issei Hayato, and how he becomes a devil and then fulfills his destiny to be the greatest Red Dragon Emperor, and eventually his dream of getting a harem. Thus normally what would have happened is that the paper slip advertising wishes, given to him by a girl in a cosplay Batgirl suit, before his date would have activated and saved his life. The paper slip was actually a summoning talisman, handed out by a familiar of the devil, Rias Gremry. She was one of the supervisors of Ko Town, and one of the idols of Issei's school. Normally Issei's strong desire would have summoned Rias, causing her to use an evil piece to save his life, by reincarnating him into a devil, yet be it by a quirk of fate, or simple probability of different events across the multiverse, things happened differently this time. Maybe it was the sweat and heat of carrying the paper slip around all day, while going from one place to another on his date with Yuma, that messed up the ink of the magic circle drawn on the talisman. Maybe it was the magical energies of corrupted light spear of the fallen angel that tangentially interacted with the talisman due to being at close range to them, spear in issei's stomach, talisman in his pocket, that resulted in the function of devil summoning talisman changing. Maybe it was issei's blood that fell everywhere, changed the shape of the magic circle drawn on the talisman. Could have just been the work of a shitty work of hack magus that should choke on flowers, trying to aid the heroes of another world by summoning King Arthur. The multiverse is vast, and the probability of anything that could happen differently that could exists. Thus in that moment of dying, when issei's soul left his body, he entered a dream world. That world that connected him to a auburn redhead named Ritsuka Fujimaru. The events of the dream world were ridiculous and nonsensical, especially given that they were created by issei's mishmash desires of wanting to live and touch boobs. Ritsuka, however, was an incredibly lucky girl, and also an expert in dealing with nonsense, thus through perseverance, empathy and charism that could even affect a dragon, issei's mind and soul was saved. His will to live shone strong enough to affect his body back in his home world. Thus unseen by anyone, a concentrated draconic magical energy shone in issei's stomach, and when it disappeared left his stomach whole with unblemished skin. Yet, Issei then had a new desire, a desire that overrode even his will to life, a desire to help the girl who saved him. The girl with the weight of the world on her shoulder, as in another world, she was the one tasked with saving her world, and getting back all of human history that was incinerated by a demon that knew only pity. Thus Issei Hayate's will and soul ended up connecting to Chaldea's fate servant summoning, and servant rider, Issei Hayate came to Chaldea. In the cool public park, 4 hours after sunset, the body of Issei Hayate laid on the ground, next to the infamous fountain, where multiple couples confessed their love, or ended their date with a kiss. No one had come to their area, as a barrier made by the fallen angel Rainier was left up from when she wanted to isolate her prey and kill him. The barrier was left callously behind, as the fallen expected the barrier to cycle through its energies till it runs out and disperse. That way, when the boy's body was found later on, it could be attributed to a random mugging turned sour or something. Yet, the body of Issei Hayate was alive. It was simply sleeping, and laid there for hours, and hours, and hours. When it was close to midnight, Issei's fingers began to twitch and jerk, as his eyes slowly opened up. Issei just laid there for a while, just taking in the feel of the grass on his back, and the wind flowing over his face and bare stomach. He blinked as he felt the wind on his stomach, and sat up touching his stomach to see it healed and whole. It took him a moment to remember how he ended up in the park, with his clothes damaged like it was, along with why he smelled of blood. No, why he was surrounded by blood. His blood. Yet all of that to a back seat in his mind as he, almost with mindfulness, stood up and just looked at the clear sky and full moon. A spark of spite sprang in his chest. It was a fleeting emotion, random and irrational, yet Issei gritted his teeth for a moment, his eyes watering a bit, before he sighed and looked down. Shoulders sagging. "Partner," spoke the Welsh dragon sealed in Issei's soul. "We're home." And right upon hearing those words, it was as if everything clicked into focus. Issei's heart began to pound quicker, louder. The emotions that exploded in his chest as he remembered what was from his perspective the last year rose up and kept shouting in his head. The adventures, the people, the heroes, the events, the enemies, the rivals. All of it crashed into his mind. "Issei," Drake said in a gentle tone that one almost couldn't imagine the Red Dragon Emperor speaking with. "Breathe. The last battle. The temple. The hype, the rush, the struggle, the despair, the hope, the exhilaration, the determination, the anger, the sadness, the despair, the rage, the calmness, the resolution, the determination, the exhilaration, the victory, the joy, and finally, all of Issei's emotions keep spinning faster and faster in his chest till her face entered his mind, her cheer, her smile. That stupid excited smile, with a wink and a thumbs up. Issei looked up, the moon's light shining on his face and reflecting off the tears that found themselves flowing down his face. Drake, issei finally spoke. I wanna go back. Yeah, the red dragon said. No elaboration needed. No other words were said. The adventure of the soul of Issei Haida in another world ended in victory and salvation, and the reward was naturally to go home. Now after the end, the only thing left in Issei's heart was longing. As a new school day began, Rias couldn't help but feel anxious. Not in a bad way. Mostly. She simply didn't know how things will go. She had tried to talk to Issei after the confrontation with the Fallen, and his utter annihilation of them, yet Issei just rebuked her with a simple excuse. Sorry, but I have a guest at home, and it would be rude for me to stay out too late. We can talk tomorrow during the day whenever you're free. However, that's not what threw her off. It was the way Issei spoke, with quiet confidence that showed through his relaxed stance. He simply greeted everyone and walked away, with the utter surety of himself in a situation where he was facing an unknown element. And Rias was sure Issei had no idea what they were, since when Rias asked him if he knew he was living on her territory, he just looked at her confused. I'm pretty sure I've lived here my whole life and never heard about you being in any way related to the mayor or government office of Ko. A bit funny, but it showed he didn't know about her being the supervising devil of Ko. He did notice that she and her peerage weren't human, but he didn't comment or act upon it, and then he walked away. He didn't run, he didn't try to hurry up, well no, he jogged a bit since he had to get home for his guest, the ex-nun, Asia Argento. But he never, not even once, showed worry or fear toward Rias or her peerage, even thought they were an unknown. It was something she couldn't help but notice and think on, because he was the Red Dragon Emperor of this era. He was strong enough to be able to masterfully use his Longinus, and maybe even his balance breaker, and he didn't know about the local supernatural scene around him. What does that mean? And so, a new school day came, and Rias' only thoughts were about the upcoming meeting with Issei. As soon as the lunch period came up, Rias sent for Kiba to get Issei as she and Akino and Kaneko waited in the Occult Research Club house. She had told Sona about the encounter, and the oddities she noticed. She told Sona to be ready to accept a summoning from her just in case. Hell, look at me, feeling nervous at meeting the perverted lover of boobs, Issei, of all people. Bucho, I brought him, Kiba announced as he entered the room, followed by Issei. Again, the moment Issei was away from school and other people, the excitable aura he projected dimmed down to just being neutrally pleasant. Hello, Issei, thank you for coming to meet us, Rias said with a calm smile. Heh, thank you for having me, Rias-senpai, Issei said with a smile back, rubbing the back of his head. Issei took his own seat on the couch, opposite to Rias and her peerage, who proceeded to introduce everyone. As you know, Kiba is part of the Occult Research Club, along with Kaneko-chan here, and my vice president, Akino, Rias said. Hello? Akino said with a slight sultry smile. You really caused quite a lot of noise last night. Honestly, that blast was quite shocking. There weren't even ashes left, she said before licking her lips. How violent, Issei-kun. Are you normally that rough in dealing with problems? Rias sighed at Akino's playful attitude. Akino, Rias said pointedly at her queen's flirty attitude. It would likely throw Issei off too much, but maybe it would help him relax. Plus, she expected Issei looking flustered would be quite cute. Ah, my bad. It's just that they were a danger to Asia and probably wanted to harm her or worse. Plus, that fallen angel woman who was their leader, I think, tried to kill me last week, Issei said back with a chuckle. The Gremry peerage and king blinked at Issei's reply. He wasn't even fazed by Akino's flirting, which made the Thunder Priestess pout at being ignored like that. But then Issei's admission at the Fallen's action threw the tone of the meeting off from the get-go. I'm sorry, Issei, Rias said right away. That shouldn't have happened. Ko is mine and Sona's territory. They shouldn't have acted like that here. I can't believe they almost got away with attacking innocent people, she said with a serious expression. Hey, Rias-senpai, it's okay. Issei held his hands up. All's well that ends well and all that. Rias pouted at how distant Issei felt, now that she was dealing with what she felt like was the real him. No, really, please tell me if there's something I can do to fix my lapse in vigilance, Rias said seriously. Issei looked a little surprised for the first time since this meeting began. You should take her up on that offer, or she'll be sad and pouty for the rest of the day. Bucho is too much of a responsibility worrywart, Aquino said in a mock-whispering way, with one hand held next to her mouth. Aquino! Rias said, scandalized and blushing, to which Aquino chuckled, while Kiba and Kaneko smiled at their antics. Issei found himself smiling a bit, as he let out a breath, feeling himself relax slightly in the friendly atmosphere. Then I'll get back to you on that one. How about that, Rias? Issei asked calmly. Sure! Rias beamed in response, and with that the meeting continued on a more pleasant note. So, I'm guessing you have some questions for me, Issei said, getting to the heart of the matter, to which Rias happily nodded at. Of course, but don't you have some questions for me too? Rias said back, slightly confused. You know that we're not humans, right? But not what species? Rias continued mentally. Devils, Issei said plainly, making the peerage blink in slight surprise, raising their assessment of him. Drake told me all about it. Issei raised an eyebrow as the ORC looked at him with visible shock. You can communicate with the sealed dragon already? Kiba asked. Yeah, I've been able to talk to him for a while now, Issei said with what looked like a sly smile. He was too lazy to commit to. Issei, if you don't mind me asking, how long has it been since you've awakened your sacred gear? Rias asked, looking more focused now. Technically a week. Issei thought, then nodded to himself. Technically? Rias blinked at the wording. Issei closed one eye, as held a finger to his mouth. Sorry, but even I have things I like to keep a secret. Issei grinned. Rias blinked at this playful, confident reply. Since when was Issei this calmly brave with girls? Oh my! Aquino walked around the table to sit next to Issei. Can't you tell little ol' me? It will be our secret. Aquino tried to lean against Issei as she asked this, only to be interrupted. Boop. Yeah? Aquino stopped and sat back, thrown off by a pay pervert, smoothly and without hesitation booping her nose button. Huh. You're kinda cute when you're flustered, Aquino-senpai, Issei said back with a chuckle. What? Aquino found herself blush, not because she wasn't sure to being flirted to, but because she didn't expect it. Ah, I see. You're strong on the offense, but weak on the defense, Issei said with a wide grin, but it sounded like he was quoting someone. The memory of that quote making his smile more genuine. Bucho, Kaneko said, tugging on Ria's sleeve. What's happening? Issei is suave and flirty. Aquino is blushing. Something is wrong with the world. I want to say Kaneko-chan is exaggerating it, but honestly I feel the same, Kiba added. Issei and Rias shared a look before both found themselves laughing. Mo, it's not nice to tease a lady, Issei-kun, Aquino said, crossing her arms under her chest, before looking at the smirking Rias. Et2 Rias? Sorry, Rias said through her giggles. So, she continued, putting the focus back on Issei. I didn't realize this is what you're really like, Issei. Issei wiggled his hand in a SOSO gesture. It's a kinda recent sort of thing. Very well then. Rias nodded, understanding some people wanting to reinvent themselves after a life-altering event. Can you at least tell me how your first encounter with the Fallen happened? Sure. Issei nodded. A week ago, I was asked out on a date by a girl named Amano Yuma, who was a fallen angel in disguise. We went on a date, and then at the end at the park with the famous fountain, she stabbed me with a magic light spear. The Gremry devils frown, angry at the Fallen's actions being so callous to human life, and feeling sympathetic to the boy. After that she left, and while I was bleeding I awakened boosted gear, stuff happened, I healed and went back home. I ended up talking with Drake and figured some things out. Issei summed things up. Rias and her peerage blinked at the barebones explanation, however no one objected, or asked for more information. Rias saw that Issei had went through a traumatic event, and thus had the right to his privacy. Very well, then, Rias nodded. I suppose your use of excessive force with the Fallen yesterday is understandable, given what they put you through. Honestly, I did not expect them to be that weak. Issei shook his head, actually looking surprised at how weak the Fallen Angel and their group were. Huh! The Gremry peerage said. I mean, I was walking into an enemy base, so first objective was to confuse and disorient them. So I just launch a basic AoE attack at full power, so I could scatter them, then take them out one by one. Issei explained. Instead they all died right away. I was kinda shocked. The Gremry peerage looked at the Hayadu boy slack-jawed. Not just at his strength, rather what was more surprising was that Issei seemed to have a tactical mind for battle from the get-go. Maybe he plays a lot of strategy games? But that's not something you can easily translate to real life, as you can't act with the calmness of playing a video game. Rias thought. From the concentration magical energy I felt, you went in there in full balance breaker mode. Akino said, as she had studied the residue of energy left after Issei's battle with the Fallen. I have no frame of reference for how strong or weak they are. Issei shrugged in amused panic. Rias giggled, causing the group to smile again. Issei, why don't you join us in some stray devil hunts later on, so you can see what level of force to use against whom? In 1 week since awakening his sacred gear, he achieved balance breaker and can communicate with the Red Dragon. Rias thought. He has to be about the most talented Red Dragon Emperor this millennia. Maybe ever? Rias didn't want to bring up the recruiting subject just yet, but, maybe? Issei tilted his head, before giving a half nod. Is there anything else you wanted to know? Say, Issei, do you know what a peerage is? Rias asked. Issei raised an eyebrow and shook his head. Akino held back a giggle at how overeager her king was. Rias proceeded to explain the evil piece system. The power of each piece along with their numerical value in pawn pieces. She also added in the explanation of what a contracted magician was. The red-haired devil expected Issei's reaction to be intrigued, bored, or more likely excited as she explained how if he became a high-class devil he can get his own evil pieces set and have his harem as his peerage. Yet Issei's expression just grew more serious and concerned, before finally asking, Rias, only high-class devils get their own evil pieces, right? Ah, yes. Rias blinked at the question. And how high-class devils there are in the underworld total? Issei asked, an undercurrent of something in his tone. Rias' expression perked up at that. He's worried that getting to high-class status is likely not possible if there are too many high-class devils. While it is difficult, it would be possible, much more so for the boosted gear holder. Probably less than 300 but. Rias quickly added. As the Red Dragon Emperor, it would be much easier for someone of your strength to rise up quickly and get his own harem. I don't really care about getting a harem. Issei shook his head. It's just that. The gasp that went through the Occult Research Clubroom made Issei blink and look around in surprise. He saw the shocked and paled faces of the devils around him. Issei, are you okay? Do you need a hug? How about touching my boobs? Akino said from next to him. Huh? Issei blinked in surprise. Issei, Kiba spoke up next. Maybe you should take a vacation from school and spend it with family and friends. He advised. What? Issei-senpai, please don't cry. Kaneko spoke up next. I'm not crying? Issei tilted his head in confusion. Do you want a cookie? You can take one. Just only one. Kaneko offered from her dessert plate. Thank you, Rias-senpai. Why are you crying? Issei shouted in shock. I am so sorry for whatever those fallen angels did to you, Issei. Please don't abandon your dream or give up on life. Rias said passionately. Would you all calm the fuck down? The Red Dragon holder shouted in panic at the devils trying to comfort him. After things calmed down in the ORC room, with Issei repeatedly telling the devils that he was fine, that he wasn't suicidal, or any other negative thing they thought of, they finally were able to continue their discussion. So you are fine? Rias asked for what seemed like the 10th time. Yes. Seriously, the near-death experiences just gave me a different perspective on things, that all. Issei insisted. Originally he planned to slowly turn away from telling people that he wanted a harem, but maybe he should keep it up, if only to avoid this type of reaction. Right, good. Rias nodded. You were asking about high-class devils, right? She said to try and bring back the discussion to point they were on. Yeah, I was just kinda worried you'd overwhelm the human population, and all that. Issei stated, making Rias raise an eyebrow, but nodded in approval at Haya's hindsight. There are provisions against that made by the Satans. not just on the bar for the class promotion exam, and needing to be a high-class devil, but also because we don't wish to antagonize other factions, such as the Church and Heaven, or other pantheons do to their believers. Rias explained. Issei nodded. So the stalemate with Heaven and other pantheons protects humanity because no one wants to start a fight that would drag everyone in it. Issei thought. His dragon companion sent a feeling of nodding in agreement. I'm surprised that you're asking such a broad thing, Rias said, curiosity. Issei shrugged. I tend to play a lot of RPGs with heavy world building, so I was intrigued. Oh. Which one is your favorite? Rias asked, her eyes lighting up, as the other devils sighed in amusement. I can't call any my favorite, but stories of games were my favorite for a long while. Although funny enough, Breath of Flames was also something I found myself gravitating to, Issei said with an amused chuckle, as he and Rias fell into their own discussion for a while, and the rest of the peerage watched on fondly. After 10 or so minutes, Aquino coughed to get their attention again. Issei, you never told Rias your answer about joining her peerage or not. Aquino pointed out. Oh, right, Rias said, blushing, as she herself had forgotten. About that, Issei began. However, the answer came from someone else. I'm afraid you don't have enough pieces nor power to reincarnate my wielder, Gremry Devil. Drake spoke up, an emerald circle shined from Issei's left arm. The red dragon. Kiba said in awe, at the powerful being addressing them. Wait, really? Rias said in surprise. Issei, do you mind if I cast a small spell to check? Issei shrugged and nodded. Rias casted some kind of diagnostic spell and her eyes widened at the answer. No, she most definitely can't reincarnate Issei as she was now. I really did not see that coming. Rias thought. Actually, Issei spoke up. I should probably clarify something, he said before looking Rias in the eyes. Rias, I hope this doesn't affect our friendship, but with all due respect, I don't wish to become a devil. Rias sat back, taking in Issei's words. I wish to live and die as a human. I don't want to outlive my friends or family, and I have other reasons for that as well. I'm sorry, I don't wish to lead you on or give you false hope, but I'm never joining a peerage or becoming a devil. Rias would usually try to negotiate, say that he should take his time and think on it. Yet the firm determination in Issei's eyes reminded Rias of people who were absolute in the decisions they considered too important. The ones who make a stance and never move from it. His eyes reminded her of her brother at times, or even her cousin Sai when he said he's one day be a Satan, so no one else would suffer as he had. All right, Rias smiled and nodded, accepting the answer. If that's your decision, I'll respect it. Rias playfully chuckled. The offer for a contracted magician is still open. That, Issei sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Might end up looking bad for you. I really suck at magic. At least anything really complicated. I can understand it fine, but implementation, yeah, I'm better at breaking magic than doing it. How would you know that, when you've only been aware of the supernatural side, and awaken your sacred gear for a week? Aquino asked what was on everyone's mind. Secret. Issei grinned. That's mean. Aquino pouted. Very well then, Rias said back playfully. Maybe you'll share with us later on. She then asked. So, is there anything else anyone wants to add? She asked her peerage. No. Kaneko shook her head. Oh, I think I'd rather take my time, getting to know our cute dragon Kohai. Aquino licked her lips, trying to fluster Issei, but he only chuckled back, making her pout at the non-reaction. I have something I'm wondering about, if you don't mind, Issei-san. Kiba spoke up. Shoot. Issei nodded. Who's Fujimaru? Kiba asked, making the others look at him in surprise. Back when you got that phone book, that was the page you stopped on. I was just curious, nothing more. Issei's face slowly fell blank, as he looked down, lost in his thought. The mood in the room suddenly turned somber. Fujimaru is the word seemed stuck to Issei's throat. The heaviness in his eyes, that Rias saw after his battle with the fallen, was back. He looked up, meeting their gazes. Someone that isn't here, he said nothing else. It felt too difficult to dare even ask, given the immense sadness emanating from the Haida boy. Do you want some? Kaneko asked, offering her whole plate. Surprise returned to the rest of the Gremry peerage, as even Kaneko was affected by Issei's mood to such a degree. I'll take one. Issei chuckled, and did so, taking a buttercream biscuit, eating it whole so as not to drop crumpets anywhere. The group sat in silence for a few moments, before Rias looked at the hanged clock of the room. Classes are going to start again soon, Rias pointed out. Is there anything you want to ask us, Issei? Issei thought about it, then nodded. 3 things. And Rias, I mean no insult, but please answer this, Issei began, making Rias raise an eyebrow. How old are you, eh? Rias blinked in shock. Oh my, asking a lady her age. Akino smirked. I retract my sympathies. Kaneko said. I'm just saying. Issei said back. Is Rias senpai 50-100-year-olds masquerading as a high schooler? I'm 18. Rias shouted back red-faced. Akino, chuckling, moved to Rias' side, and side-hugged her to comfort her. There, Rias, Akino said, while looking at Issei with a sultry look for flustering her king. Honestly, how could you be so mean, Issei? Sorry. I was just checking since I wasn't sure if Rias was the only Gremry, or is it a family, or was she the same Gremry that existed all the way from the start? Issei clarified. No, the pillar families are entire bloodlines with dozens of members usually. Rias said back. Right. Issei said back with an apologetic smile. That was actually my second question. If Rias senpai was the Gremry devil, as in the one that's always been around, or a Gremry devil, as in it's her family name. He clarified. After things calmed down, with everyone chuckling or smiling at the mood, Issei continued. I just have one last question, Issei said, and suddenly his whole demeanor changed. Are devils enemies of humanity? The atmosphere became tense, like talks before a battle began on the fields of war. The Gremry peerage weren't talking to Issei Haida anymore, but to the Welsh Dragon Hero. The walk to his home was a quiet one. Issei was wondering what to do with his life now going forward, or what dreams to follow. Even asking what dreams did he have now. You didn't have to be so serious with them, Drake said after a while. Maybe, Issei said back. I just had to be sure. Sure that devils aren't an active harmful threat to humanity in this world. The evil peace system is something that could easily be abused and a bit fucked up the more you think about it, but it's not an existential threat, thankfully. Of course not. Rias had spoken after what felt like a long silence, as she composed herself. Devil in the past may have been antagonistic to humans, but nowadays we want nothing more than to coexist and live side by side with mankind. We don't deal with souls, and give that the new devils making up our population mainly come from humans. We want nothing more than to hold each other in good standing. It would be the height of idiocy to treat humanity badly, or try to harm your race as a whole. She spoke with all the diplomacy training her parents have given her, feeling that she was on the precipice of something big. Something that if mishandled would have disastrous consequences. Thus she answered firmly and clearly. Still, it kind of felt like bullying. Drake said with a shrug. Since when do you care about abusing your strength? Issei joked. Ever since I met worthy opponents. Issei found himself smiling in nostalgia. Fair. He conceded the point. The two were silent, enjoying the night air as they headed back to the Haida household. Issei expected some excitable story his mom would tell him about her day with Asia, or how she tried to learn Italian to talk to the Forgan nun. Issei. Miki Haida shouted to her son upon him returning home. Asia is magic. What? I was cutting some vegetables. I got distracted with the language lessons and cut my finger. Then Asia did magic and healed it. Miki shouted in a mixture of shock, worry and excitement, as she showed him her hand with all her fingers looking fine. Asia in the background was panicking, flapping her arms around, not knowing if she did something bad, or something bad was happening. Issei sighed. Okay. Right. We're doing this. Issei spent the rest of the evening sitting his excitable parents down, and explaining the supernatural world to them, along with Asia's powers and then his own. My son is a Sentai hero. Goro Haida shouted to the sky with pride. Damn it, Dad. That's technically correct. Issei had to spend the rest of the day getting his parent to calm down, and not call some TV station to come see their superhero son. Asia excitedly chanting Sentai hero with his mom wasn't helping. The sound of the digital clock with an anime girl-themed alarm was the only sound in Issei Hayate's room. Was it always so loud? Issei said, staring at the ceiling. It was 3 in the morning, and he was too wide awake to go back to sleep. I even went to sleep early today. He frowned. He thought he was starting a good habit again. Looking at the clock one more time, he saw only a few minutes had passed. With a sigh, he got up from his bed and decided to do something productive. Issei put on a training suit, walked quietly out of his house, and went on a run. Boost! The sacred gear announced in a quiet voice, its effects taking place, even without Issei summoning the red gauntlet. The intention alone was enough. That was the level of mastery Issei had over his Longinus. As an object bonded to his soul, there was no need to physically manifest it to activate its ability. Of course, in an actual fight, he would summon the Longinus, so he wasn't mentally focusing on not summoning it. As Issei took a long route around his hometown, his sacred gear acted as a way to add pressure on his body, as further training. It is possible to decrease the time between boosts using the Longinus in its normal state. It would take effort and stamina, but with skill it could be done. The boost wasn't targeted at Issei's own body to empower him, but rather at the immediate environment around him. The cool air became colder, his clothes became heavier, the gravity acting upon him increased, and the density of the air acted as further resistance to his movement. For the next 2 hours, Issei pushed his body as he boosted the environmental effects interacting with him every 5 minutes. On his way back, Issei was drenched with sweat, with some of it running down his brow and falling off his face. The sun was beginning to rise up, the sky shining with yellow light across the azure blue. His body felt sore in that pleasant way of making a worthwhile effort. The soul is reflected upon the body. Issei recalled one of Wavers and Da Vinci's many lessons on magecraft and metaphysics. It's been near 2 weeks now since Issei had returned back to his world. Something he noticed in the past few days, there were small changes in his body without him having done anything. Stuff like his palm and fingers starting to develop calluses, becoming more rougher and hard-skinned. Some bright spots on his body almost looked like his old scars. It was actually something that brought a smile to him when he first saw it. His journey with Chaldea throughout the Grand Order was one that ended up with him collecting scars from the harsh battles he faced. Since he had a servant body at the time, he should have returned to a pristine state once healed, but he ended up with marks upon his body after every battle. Da Vinci theorized that his soul operated a bit differently from their humans of their world, letting him grow even as a servant. Or it might be that him technically being alive in his home world, and still connected to it via his body, meant he was a living servant, and thus could still grow and change, with scars being a part of that, as well as growth in skill and magical power. So given all that, Issei thought to might as well train his body and see how much of his powers from when he was a servant he retained, and if he can go even further now that he's back in his original body. As Issei was on his way home, he looked toward the convenience store that started to open. He had some pocket money with him, and wondered if he should get some snacks. No, there should be snacks at home, he muttered to himself. Then something else, more important, came to mind. He needed to make his home better protected and safe for his parents in Asia. There should be some in the supermarket, right? Should be in the barbecue section, he said to himself, and went on his way. Hey son. Didn't see you in the house, or come down from your room, Goro said to Issei, as he found his son in the garden around the house. Issei was in one of the corners of the garden, next to the intersecting fences, planting something in the ground. Yeah, I went to a run this morning, Issei said, smiling at his dad, before getting back to his task. Oh? Trying to build up muscles to look good for girls? Goro joked. Trying to look good for Asia-chan, he added with a knowing grin. Heh, something like that. Truthfully, I woke up really early and couldn't sleep, Issei said back with a laugh. I was gonna take a shower, but then I remembered this, so I thought take care of this first, Issei said, as he finished digging a small hole with his hand. Goro kept smiling, but the moment Issei looked away, he frowned. Something was off with his son, but he wasn't sure what it was exactly. Issei was still himself, his perverted goofball of a son, but there were these little moments that he seemed different. as if he had aged by years and holds this heavy sadness within him. Should he confront him or have Mickey talk to him? Was this a sensitive topic, or something he could confront head-on with his son as a man? Before he could make a decision, he couldn't help but be curious about what Issei was doing. This being? Goro asked, before he saw what Issei took out of his pocket, making his eyes bulge out. I see, where did you get that? That was a marble-sized diamond. About 2/3 of a finger wide. Goro guesstimated. I bought some charcoal earlier and compressed it into that. Issei casually said. We could make so much money, not that the Hayate family were pressed for money, but having some away for a rainy day was always good. Dad, no? Trust me, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Issei quickly said back, as he could almost see Yen's signs in his father's eyes. Well, maybe in an emergency or something, but something to depend on, he said. Issei then summoned his boosted gear, and began transferring energy into the compress-made diamond. Goro sighed. Welp, there goes that get-rich-quick scheme. Issei chucked. So why are you making diamonds and burying them in the backyard? Jewels in general are good for transferring and holding energy. Issei began to explain. Once charged, he placed the diamond in the hole and covered up the hole completely. Goro nodded like he understood. Issei smiled, internally laughing a bit at his dad's reaction, even though Goro didn't see why Issei was doing this yet. Which means they are good for holding up a barrier, Issei said, making Goro stop play acting and raise an eyebrow at his son. A barrier? And why would we need that? Goro asked calmly. Issei dusted his hands off and walked slowly with his dad to the house, because it never hurts to have some safety. Being the guy with the boosted gear is kind of a big deal in the supernatural side of the world. I want our home to have something like a security system around it. Hey, is Grandpa's broken fishing rod still in the attic? Issei asked at the end. Yeah, it should still be there. So this thing is like an alarm system? Will it call the magic police if a yokai jumped over? Goro joked, but seeing Issei not laugh back, he frowned. Should we be worried? Not really. For the most part. Issei began to explain. Ko Town being under the supervision of the sisters of two of the current Satans, basically makes it a big deal kinda in the supernatural world, because no one wants to piss off the leaders of the underworld. While I am strong, people don't know that, so they might think they can try something. This barrier is to stop them from trying. Issei explained. Issei and Goro reached the attic and began looking around for the fishing rod. And how does burying energy-filled diamonds in the garden help with this? Actually, why do you want your grandpa's fishing rod? Goro asked. The diamonds to maintain the barrier, and for being rechargeable. Also they are tough so shouldn't break easily, due to, well, being diamonds. Issei answered. Goro nodded. The fishing rod is an anchor because it has a sentimental value to us, so it acts as a good focus for the barrier. I could have done the same cornerstones, rather than the diamonds, but then I'd have to rampage around the house looking for stuff we cared about, and I didn't want to sacrifice my hentai games or porn magazines. Goro turned to Issei with a deadpan look. Or your printed harem fictions. Issei gave a dry look back. Seriously, why do you print and bookbind them? Just read them on the computer. That is a very smart use of limited resources, son. Good job. Goro instantly smiled as he replied. Same reason why you buy dirty mags rather than watch on the computer than scrub your browser history like a smart person. It just feels nice to hold a book in your hands. He said to the second question. Touché. Issei nodded at his father's wisdom. The two were silent for a moment, then laughed to themselves. Finally they found the fishing rod, or rather Issei found one half and Goro found the other half. Open maw. Issei spoke his personal aria for using magic. He didn't need to do so. In fact, due to having different spiritual organs for using magical energy, he didn't use magic the same way as humans from Chaldea's world. However, when it comes to using magecraft, rather than his own magic system, that he learned with Drake and his friend coach him to create and learn, he simply liked the mental reminder of the difference. It helped him get into that academic headspace for magecraft, rather than working off of being hot-blooded for his dragon magic, as he and Drake called it. In order to use magecraft, on first needed to connect to the foundation of its said magic system, that's engraved into the world. What is that? How can something be engraved upon the world? History. The simple answer is history, stories, and myths. Thank God for Waver simplifying things. Simply put, the history of magical events places a foundation for that miracle to be revisited over and over through magecraft, thus reenacting that miracle once more. Simply, things like reinforcement or alteration exist in the subconscious of all humans due to what they all think of when they think of magic. Something to make greater. Something to make different or change. It was something that was thankfully present even in issei's world. Other magecraft, however, he might have to revise by studying on the history of how things happened here, as opposed to Ritsuka's world. Using a simple reinforcement, Issei mended the broken fishing rod, returning it to a greater whole. Issei smiled at his work, even though it's a simple spell, while Goro looked fascinated. Did Drake teach you all of this? Goro had wanted to comment that they could save up on so much money by just repairing anything that broke, but that question had a much stronger pull in his mind. Something like that, Issei said, giving a slight smile. He then got to work realizing the bounded field and placing the conditions within it. Goro frowned at the non-answer, but stood back for now given how busy his son looked. Is this gonna take long? Goro asked. 10 minutes maybe at most? Issei said back. Alright, Goro nodded. Issei nodded back, then focused on the fishing rod. Bounded field. Magic barriers. Wards. Whatever name they had across the world, it was a place designated by a mage to separate the space inside a boundary line from the outside. Issei wouldn't call himself an expert in this magic field. He couldn't do any of the insane stuff he had seen other servants pull off, or even dream of something like a reality marble. Although fuck, it would be cool to have something like unlimited blade works. Issei thought, romanticized wistfulness. He could hear Drake snort in the back of his mind. However, due to being technically a dragon, Issei carried a thaumaturgical foundation, one that existed within him regardless of world placement. Being a dragon, it might be annoying, and definitely inflated Drake's ego even more, but the proverb was right. You should always be yourself. Unless you can be a dragon, then always be a dragon. Damn straight. Drake said back in Issei's mind, making the teen chuckle. The important thing is, there are endless stories related to dragons, thus multiple magecraft disciples that could be applied to them. Dragons were known to steal things of value, to hoard and guard their treasures gained by right of conquest. In most stories, one can't steal from a dragon without major consequences. One can't take the most valuable treasure unless they first slayed the dragon guarding it. In this case, Issei was the dragon, and his treasure was his family and new friend. I hereby declare this ground mine by right of blood, its treasures mine by love and safeguarded under my wings as my dragon's hoard. When Issei finished the incantation, the aimless magic energy covering the house converged and was shaped into the barrier, marking this place as property of a dragon, and mercy be upon any who trample it lightly. Phew, Issei wiped his brow, as he placed the fishing rod in an out-of-the-way place, to be hidden in plain sight in the attic. Within the barrier his family and friends would be safe, as long as he was alive. He would be instantly alerted should anyone with malicious intent tries to enter his house or get close to his family. The barrier was vague on some specifics, but had enough power to bull rush most problems. It would take someone insanely skilled in magic to bypass it, some unique being or a god. Even then, he should still get a heads up if something like that happened. Hopefully something like that doesn't happen, since he hadn't went out of his way to really make that much of a splash on the supernatural scene. Since when can you speak English that well? Goro asked curiously. Before Issei answered, Goro continued, thinking out loud with his arms crossed. Also, I have to say I'm surprised at how good your Italian is, that you can communicate with Azazel in almost everything, even though you only met her a little while ago. Hey, for the sake of a pretty girl, I can be very studious. Issei chuckled, to which Goro laughed back in agreement and nodded. Issei, son? Goro, however, wasn't deterred by Issei's deflection. Ever since that date with that Yuma girl, what was it? 2 weeks now? You've been different. It seems like something is weighing you down. Issei had told his parents that he had been pranked that day. That the girl was just dared by her friends, and they came and made fun of him for thinking she was asking him out for real. Then he spent the entire day either in the cinema or the arcade playing and wasting time till he was tired, and that's why he came home late. Issei looked away, half glad that his parents noticed, and half dreading the long talk he was going to have with them to explain everything. You know you can come to me or your mother if something's bothering you. If something happened, right? Goro said gently. Yeah, I know that, Dad. Issei sighed and nodded, but the grateful smile never left his face. It's a little bit crazy, but it would take too long to talk about. Can you and Mom just give me some time? Issei asked. Sure, Goro placed a hand on his son's shoulders. Anything you need. Now go take a shower, you stink. Iori Murayama wasn't like other girls. She didn't necessarily like girlish activities, preferring a fighting sport as her hobby, and more physical activities. Something like shopping for clothes wasn't an activity that brought her enjoyment. She tended to be more decisive as getting her clothing, rather than spend a lot of time deliberating on what to get. It was something of a small point of pride she had in herself, to not waste time unlike other girls. She doesn't express this to her best friend, Manami Kates, since her friend does enjoy taking her time in doing things like that. Manami might think Iori was the same, but that's only because Iori just liked hanging out with her friend. It's why when she went to her usual shop, already mentally prepared for a specific number of outfits to buy, along with what type, she found herself extremely annoyed that her flow was interrupted. Because for the love of all that is holy, why was Hayate Issei in a woman's clothes store? Iori thought with a frown. Before she could even assess the situation, the Murayama girl found herself marching toward the infamous boob-loving pervert to shout him out of the store. Issei was standing near one of the changing rooms with one of the retail employees, with the pervert holding some girl's clothes. Mr. Issei. A cherubic voice called out from the changing room. Everything okay, Asia? Issei spoke back in a language that wasn't Japanese. That is what made Iori slow down in confusion. It took her a moment to parse what the language sounded like. Spanish? No, wait, the tone feels more relaxed. Is that what it is? Italian? I think. Probably. The skirt is the right size and length, but the blouse is too big. If it's not too much trouble. The innocent girl's voice said from behind the curtain. Of course, it's no problem, Issei said back, before speaking to the shop attendant. Do you have the same shirt by one size smaller? Of course, just a second. The female employee said, and headed to one of the clothes rackets. Seeing him alone, Iori proceeded toward Issei, but walked with less force as she felt like this situation wasn't as she expected. Hayato, what do you think you're doing here? Yet the moment she reached the Ape pervert, she couldn't help but instinctively fall back on her normal aggression. Issei blinked a few times as he noticed her. Yo, Murayama. Unlike the stuttering or panic she expected, Issei greeted her casual. Wha? Don't joe me. What are you doing here? This is the girls' store. Iori pushed to try and get him to answer her quickly. Yes. I am aware. However, Issei answered her in a dry tone that threw her off, making her take a step back. A family guest and a friend of mine is living with me and my parents right now. She has a limited amount of clothes due to traveling a lot, but given that she's staying with us for the foreseeable future, I'm here with her to get her some new outfits. She doesn't know a lot of Japanese, so I'm translating for her. I see. Iori said as she processed that, but couldn't help her suspicion that the Hayato boy was using this chance to perv on the poor girl somehow. And I'm sure you're not making her wear skimpy outfits, while telling her those are normal Japanese fashion trends, she said with her arms crossed, as accusatory glare on her face. Issei rolled his eyes. I don't perv on someone I'm responsible for. Iori felt herself flinch and step back from shock. Not just at Issei's dismissive attitude toward her, but his response. Issei? Not perving? And no way. That's impossible, right? Iori thought. No way, are you really Hayato Issei? It's almost like you're a decent human being now. Iori couldn't hide her shock. Issei deadpanned. Excuse me, miss? I brought the shirt. The attendant came back with a blouse with a sweater on top of it as part of the outfit, and placed it over the curtain. Thank you. Angelic girl's voice came from behind the curtain. A few moments later the curtain opened to reveal a blonde foreigner. How do I look, Mr. Issei? The blonde asked Issei right away. You look cute, Asia. It looks good on you. Issei replied with a small smile on his face. Okay, seriously, what the fuck? Iori couldn't help but think. Somehow Hayate's calm demeanor and non-pervy gentle smile, along with speaking another language kinda made Issei look handsome. Princely even. No, stop. This is Issei, for God's sake. It's just some kind of trick. Stop, brain. Iori berated herself. Who is this? The girl, Asia, asked Issei upon noticing Iori, making the girl pay attention to the reason why she confronted Issei to begin with. This is Iori Murayama, a classmate from my school. Issei answered in English this time. Since when were you good at English? No, wait, since when can you speak 2 foreign languages? Iori asked in shock. Since always. Issei shrugged. You don't know what I spend my time on outside of school. Like hell, your Iori began to hiss before a quiet threw her off. Excuse me, are you Mr. Issei's friend? Asia asked in English, with the innocent excitement of meeting someone you thought you shared a commonality of having the same friend. I am. Iori began to speak English with some slow hesitance. She knew a fair bit, as she was good in the subject in school, but being good in a language by school standards didn't translate to being good in a language in real life. How do I say not a friend, but not some I'm hostile toward? She asked Issei, deciding to give a tentative olive branch for the sake of the girl living in his house, whom he actually didn't look at with dirty eyes this entire time. That realization had Iori's brain short-circuit for a second. She almost missed Issei's reply. Acquaintance, Issei said in English. All right, Iori nodded. We are acquaintances from school. She voiced out the word acquaintance slowly as she said it. Iori looked at Issei for a moment as she chose her words. Interact a lot. Really? Asia asked, looking interested. Can you tell me more? What's school like? What's Mr. Issei like in class? What are clubs like? I heard you have to join one or the school expels you through a cannon. Iori was overwhelmed by the rapid questions. Issei, however, was surprised by that last question. Wait, what? Where did you hear that? Schools don't shoot students out of a cannon. No one does that. Issei said. But TV? Asia said, sounding almost disappointed. Asia, those were either anime or game shows. They're not real. He explained. Asia pouted. It looked like so much fun. We had a lot fireworks in school festival last year. Iori offered. Really? Asia asked, her excitement reignited. Yes. Iori found herself smiling at Asia's cheerful presence. Issei found himself smiling at the interaction. He supposed Asia did need to spend time with girls her own age, and not be cooped up in his house all the time, and just go out to hang out with him, or go get groceries with his mom. Maybe I can ask Rias to help get Asia into Academy. He might as well bring it up with Asia and his parents, then go ask the Gremory Devil. Asia, Issei spoke, cutting the blonde ex-nun off from overwhelming the kendo girl with questions. How about we pay for these, leave Murayama to do her shopping, then meet up at the burger shop near here. You two can talk freely then. Issei gave Iori a look. Unless Murayama already has plans. Okay, Iori said after some thought. Alright, I will join you. To protect Asia-chan. Yay, the more the merrier. Wait, protect? Asia asked, looking confused. Is this real life? Iori Murayama thought as she looked at the scene before her. I told you to be careful with the ketchup packs. Issei sighed as he got some napkins, and began cleaning Asia's messy face, like one would a small child, or younger sibling. I'm sorry, Asia said, teary-eyed and unresisting. I dirted up the new clothes Mr. Issei got for me. Asia, it's fine, Issei said with a gentle smile. There are lots of ways to clean that up, and Mom is an expert even with just the mundane stuff. I'm just glad none got into your eyes. Careful now, okay. Asia nodded like a good child, even though she was a teenager. Who the hell is this? Where's the perversion? The chance to use any opportunity to leer at a girl, or being this close cop a feel? Who is this fit handsome prince? Wait, since when does Issei have muscles? How come I never notice he's always wearing the school blazer? Iori thought to herself. Arg, no, I'm not getting interested in a pay pervert issei of all people. Ms. Iori, are you okay? You look like you're in pain. Do you need healing? Asia suddenly said, looking at Iori in worry due to seeing the girl shake her head, while looking frustrated. It's fine, Asia, Issei interjected. She's just thinking really hard about something, Issei said, before looking to the side and whispering in Japanese. Something stupid. Iori frowned, letting out a small whine, then kicked Issei's shin under the table. Issei blinked in surprise, and frowned at Iori, before giving an annoyed smile. Iori smiled cheekily back. We're not at school, Issei said, making Iori blink in surprise. And I am very much an advocate for gender equality, so you finally show your true colors. Damn, if only I had my shernai, Iori said back, almost glad to get back into a familiar routine, but feeling also worried if she might have pushed things too far. Shame. If you did, you'd have caused a scene and the mall cops could have taken away the crazy girl waving a shernai, Issei said with an annoying attractive smirk. Iori frowned and made to kick his shin again. Issei anticipated, and moved his legs away, causing her to kick the restaurant couch without subconsciously holding back. Iori's eyes widened as her toes, even while wearing shoes, got more backlash than expected, as she felt the pain shiver up her leg. She bit into her sandwich and let out a concealed whine to hide the pain. Ms. Iori? Asia asked, concerned. Sounds like she really likes her burger, Issei said with a smirk. I see, yes, it really is a good burger. Asia nodded and smiled brightly. Iori just glared at Issei, silently promising to get back at him the next time he tried to spy on her club. Personally, Iori completely forgot to ask Asia if Issei did anything inappropriate while they lived together, as the annoying pervert kept all her attention. Aika Kiria wasn't usually a girl that was into gossip. Okay, that's not completely true. She's fine with gossip if it's interesting or entertaining, it's just that most of the time it's exaggerated tales. Yet something off with Issei Hayadu. It wasn't really the talk of school of the Ape pervert acting differently than his usual self. People don't pay attention to Issei beyond his antics, however involve the exclusive and mysterious occult research club, headed by the school's two idol beauties, and suddenly Issei is someone people couldn't help but pay a bit more attention to. Be it with dread that he might join the ORC and spend time with Rias Gremory and Akino Himejima, or just plain jealousy of Issei doing so. Talk started with Ko Academy's handsome prince, Yuro Kiba, asking Issei to head with him to the club. That was noteworthy of rumors going up, but with time something that would have died down. Then one day Issei went up to Kiba asking to speak with him in private, which spread a whole different set of juicy rumors. Although Aika observed Issei that day to see him head with Kiba to the ORC building. So Issei asked Kiba to arrange a meeting with the occult club members? Maybe with Rias Gremory specifically? He has some pull for that meeting to come up that quick, or am I overthinking this? It was almost like Issei now had a mysterious aura around him. Like in art class when they were given an assignment to make structure or figure out of clay, Issei made a very detailed figurine of a girl in some unknown uniform. He then took to painting the figure, making a rather cute-looking model. The clay model was made with such detail that Aika could even say that the figure looked like a sassy Genki girl. Issei really seems different. Aika couldn't help but think, wow, what anime character is that? Motohama asked. Those sizes are surprisingly complimentary. I thought you'd make her boobs bigger. I kind of felt this just fit better, Issei said with a shrug. Okay, this character has too much realism in her. Is this some recent actress you saw? Matsuda wondered. Also, since when are you so good at model making? And do you mind making one for Dark Knight Ingrid for me? Not a TV show. I saw this hairstyle once and went from there. And for Ingrid, sure. It costs 10,000 yen, Issei said with a smirk. Why? Oh, come on, bro. What happened to the friendship discount? Matsuda argued. The perverted trio just argued and joked around with one another, while something kept spinning in Aika's mind. Like a picture was slowly forming on what was up with Issei Hayadu. He's not as perverted as he once was. Or rather, it's not something indiscriminate aimed at anything feminine. Oh sure, he acts out with his friend, but it felt like his heart wasn't in it. Not in the sense of people who grew up from their chunibu tendencies and became embarrassed of their past selves, but someone whose interest and focus just changed. The way he walks, the way he carries himself, and now that affectionate look he has. When making that claim, model Aika's thoughts coalesced, and her eyes widened as she slowly came to a conclusion. Aika stood up from her seat, heading straight to the perverted trio with manic look and clear purpose. "Oh shit, here comes Kiryu," Matsuda said in panic. "Hide your junk." "No, cover your ears, she can't hurt us anymore if we can't listen," Motohama said, even though he has the same ability as Aika, the size scouter. The ability to tell any girl's 3 sizes. Yet Aika's ability to tell any guy's size just felt more devastating for the perverted trio, even thought Aika only threatened them with it, but never acted on that threat. Aika stopped next to Issei's desk and pointed at him like a detective that solved a massive case. "Hayate Issei, I have discovered your secret," Aika declared as she pointed dramatically at him. "Huh?" Issei blinked in surprise as his friends looked and talked between themselves in confusion. "You're no longer a virgin," Aika shouted. "Say what?" Issei leaned away looking surprised. "What?" The other 2 perverts shouted at this betrayal. "What?" However, the class's shout drowned out Motohama and Matsuda's shout. It took me a while to figure out, because unlike every other guy in school, when they finally get laid, they walk around with too much swag and jolly in their step. Or try to hide it, which makes it more obvious. You, however, just continued on naturally, but it's still there. I can sense the difference. Issei, you bastard! How dare you break our bro code of being virgins till graduation? Motohama cried out, and was actually crying, as he grabbed Issei by his shirt. We were supposed to be loser friends together, damn it. Are you beginning your popular phase without us? Are we being left behind? Matsuda shouted to the sky while crying as well. God damn it, Aika! Stop shouting weird stuff. And I didn't agree to that bullshit pact. Besides, if either of you had the chance, don't act like you wouldn't jump up at it. Issei shouted back as he and his friend fell into a play fight. While this scene caused a bit of chaos in class, it all eventually died down, as the co-students, it was just the perverted glasses girl and the perverted trio getting into some antics, and shouldn't be taken seriously. Hayate Issei, I heard you laid your pervy hands on Asia-chan. Prepare to die. Then the kendo club captain had to come and reignite the rumors. Iori Murayama raged into class armed to the teeth with Shernai and Bakken, having only just heard the rumor of Issei having slept with a girl, due to being not in the arts class at the time. The lunch period was the most chaotic one that the perverted trio had experienced in a while. Mostly due to Issei not being the slowest one of the trio all of a sudden, letting his friends bravely suffer the wrath of the kendo club so he can run away. Sadly, Iori wasn't distracted by the lesser bait, and focused slowly on Issei, running after him till she tired out first. The next day at Ko Academy cemented Issei's new reputation as a possible dangerous beast. Class, we're having a new student with us starting today. She doesn't know a lot of Japanese, so try to speak to her in English and help her out when you can, said Class 2B's homeroom teacher. My name, Asia Argento. A blonde foreign student greeted the class and bowed. Nice to meet you all. The girl spoke with a cherubic voice and had an innocent charm around her that made everyone want to hug and protect her. Many ahs were said among the class. Then Asia's eyes fell on Issei and lit up. Mr. Issei, look. We're in the same class, Asia said excitedly as she went to take her seat next to Issei. Yeah, it's good to have you around, Asia. I hope school will be fun for you. Issei smiled back. Yes, Asia's smile shined brighter. The class's reaction, however, was much different. WW, what the hell? Since when does Issei know this foreign beauty? Matsuda asked in shock. Who are you, dude? You know cute foreign chicks. You speak an exotic foreign language, and start to act charm girls. I feel like I don't know you anymore. Motohama said in equal shock. Did you take classes on how to be a damn handsome without telling us? Is that why you hang out with Kiba? Matsuda cried out. You're learning how to seduce girls and not taking us with you. What charm girls? Issei protested. No girl in school likes me, just like you too. And stop with the insane conspiracies. As the perverted trio argued, the class were also reacting in shock. The foreign beauty knows Hayate? Why? What's their relationship? Did issei just speak Italian? Since when does issei know Italian? I'm dreaming. This is a dream, this has to be a dream. And then there were two other girls talking away from the commotion. Did issei kinda sound white talking Italian? Oh God, I just thought issei sounded white, said one girl with horrified wide eyes. What's going on in the world? Nothing makes sense anymore. Her friend held her head, shouting to the heavens for things to make sense again. For the rest of that day, things were hectic, with issei almost getting lynched by his classmates. When Iori protectively asked Asia if issei did anything untoward to her, Asia didn't understand and Iori was too shy to say it outright. So, did you and issei have? Aika of course blew things up by asking that question in clear English, and Asia, being innocent girl she was too embarrassed and red-faced to answer at the beginning, almost causing another misunderstanding. And so after the arrival of Asia Argento to Ko, things eventually calmed down and fell into new norm. Days passed for issei as usual with nothing thankfully happening. It was just another usual day in school, just a math class with issei writing along the day's lesson. Suddenly issei blinked and sat up. His eyes narrowing into a glare, he abruptly stood up, surprising the other students at the sound of his chair scraping against the floor, and cutting through the flow of the lesson. Mr. Hayadu? The math teacher blinked in confusion. Issei was already heading to the door. Sorry, an emergency came up, issei just said. As he passed the confused Asia, he gave her a reassuring smile, that everything was fine, and went on his way. Issei was walking down the hall, heading into a straight line into the direction of his home. Hayada-san, what do you think you're doing outside of class? Sona Shirtorai, the student council president, and more importantly, Sona Citri, the other devil supervising Ko-town with Rias, came up in his path. She was there with her ever-present queen, Tsubaki Shinra. Family emergency, had to leave. Issei didn't stop walking, almost walking right into Sona if she didn't move out of the way. Issei could have said that she was also outside of class, but didn't feel like bantering. Hayada-san, I'm sure it's something that can wait, Sona began to say with an annoyed sigh, since Issei's disruptive action caused her to leave her own class, to go check out the commotion. Family emergency. Issei's emerald eyes sent a shiver down Sona's spine. Even her queen, who wasn't the target of his gaze, felt a sudden bout of fright. There's a fallen at my home, Issei said. His alarm barrier had tripped up and alerted him. While Sona's eyes widened, she didn't have time to react as Issei finally reached a window, opened it, and jumped straight out. From the third floor, then fire erupted from his shoulder blades, as he rocked out in the sky toward his home. Sona stared at Issei's blatant use of magical powers without any thought to secrecy and disbelief. Then she turned to see the few students who peeked out their class to check the commotion, and were now staring at the whole scene with wide eyes. Damn it, Sona sighed. She's gonna have to spend all day hypnotizing students to forget this little fuss. A few seconds later, Issei landed at his house's entrance. It's the scapegoat of God. Be careful of that one, he likes to talk, Dragat told him on the way there, as he entered his house to find his parents entertaining a guest. A tall man in business suit made from a mix of dark colors, with black and blonde hair. Issei, you're back early? His mom asked him, looking surprised. Hey Issei, this is Mr. Azazel. He's a guidance counselor for students with special talents. He stopped by to ask about you, his father said. Yo, nice to meet you, Issei-kun, Azazel said cheerfully as he held a teacup and saucer his mom had served him. I've been wanting to talk to you. I figured we'd meet when school finished, but this works out better, he said with an easygoing attitude, as if Issei ditching school and coming home right away was something he calculated for. This barrier is much more advanced than I expected. I mean, I genuinely entered without any hostile intent, so I wonder what triggered it, Azazel thought to himself. Issei, however, completely ignored the leader of the fallen angels, and went to his parents, placing a hand on their shoulders. He frowned as he realized something the barrier protection missed by still alerted him on, just to be on the safe side. Something he should have accounted for. Yes, people don't steal from dragons without heavy consequences, and can't do anything to a dragon's treasures till the dragon is dealt with. However, messing with a treasure without taking it was hazy territory, since the treasure technically wasn't stolen. Azazel used magic on his parents. Standard hypnosis. Nothing that big or harmful. Something that would go under the radar, likability and normality. Just making himself seem like someone trustworthy and already in the know about the supernatural. Thus, if his parents mentioned something about issei's magical side of things offhand, they don't think they made an error. With a hand on his parents' shoulder, issei sent a small pulse of magical energy and broke the hypnosis. It wasn't something strong enough to stand under scrutiny anyways. Just knowing one was hypnotized would break this minor hypnosis. Huh? Issei, is everything alright? Mickey asked in confusion, suddenly feeling a rush of energy like she drank some coffee. Son, Goro asked with a more serious tone, picking up on issei's aggression, even if his son had a dead calm face. Something came up. Yeah, could you guys come here for a second? Issei moved his parents behind the couch to cover them, and took their seat, facing Azazel. Oh. My bad. Most teens I know tend to want to hide their magical powers from their parents. I'm sorry, I kinda assumed you were the same. Azazel sat up, leaning forward with interest in his expression. So you lied about being a guidance counselor? Mickey asked with furrowed brows, as Goro stood next to her, with his arm around her shoulders. Actually, I am a guidance counselor for my own academy for those with sacred gears, Azazel said as he pointed at Mickey's question. He sounded jovial and light-hearted. The real reason I came here is because one of my subordinates causes some trouble for issei here. I wish to right that wrong, so here I am. He finished with a wide smile. Oh. I see. Goro said, and the Hayata elders relaxed a bit. Issei, however, sitting down facing Azazel, while leaning forward like a punk, with his arms resting on his knees, didn't react positively to Azazel's in his own opinion heartfelt apology. You know, for someone that wants to make amends, your first move, rather than say, contact me directly, send a message for Rias or Sona of wanting a meeting, since I don't know you. Issei began. Rather than do any of that, you came to my parents' home while I wasn't here and hypnotized them to gather information on me. What? Goro hissed out, as Mickey gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Whoa, I did not do anything that drastic. Azazel held his hand up. As I said, most teens don't tell their parents about magic and the supernatural. I just assumed you did the same. It would have more insulting and problematic to you if I was the one to inform them of the supernatural world. Azazel tried to argue. He could see that the Red Dragon Emperor was more aggressive and distrustful than he expected, coming in rather strongly at the perceived slight. But Azazel could still work with this. And if worse comes to worse, he could always call Vala to interject if things turned rough. I suppose that makes sense, Mickey said slowly, trying to instinctively play peacemaker. No, it doesn't, Goro said, deciding not to be nice to this not a guest intruder. Issei's right, you could have used other methods to contact us that didn't feel so scummy. You could have called that Gremry girl. I'm the leader of the Grigori. Can't really be seen asking a little girl for permission to talk to someone unrelated to her. Azazel shrugged, playful as he explained that. Then you could have just called us like a normal person, Mickey said this time, starting to get annoyed with the fallen's playboy attitude. Haha, I guess I forgot in my old age. Azazel smiled sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. For a few moments, things then just fell into silence, as issei's quietness was causing the conversation to die off. Azazel just waited for the boy's response. He could easily deal with whatever tantrum the teen acted out, by being a reasonable adult. You're old, right? Issei finally said. Ouch, that's kinda hurtful. And as a being that's thousands of years old at minimum, and the leader of a group that rebelled against heaven, Issei continued, not bothering to acknowledge Azazel's response. I'm guessing you're an expert at persuading people with difficult and uncooperative personalities to listen to you, and follow your lead. Well, I don't want to brag, but... So, Issei's now glowing emerald eyes put Azazel's danger sense on alarm. You have exactly 1 minute to convince me not to kill you, then proceed to go out and genocide the fallen race. Or get the fuck out of my house. Drake, start the countdown. What countdown? But right now, however, for the first time in a long time, he was panicking. Because how the hell could he have accounted for a newly awakened Red Dragon Emperor that could and would use fucking Juggernaut Drive as his opening move? Alright, step 1, send emergency magical signal to Vala that the meeting's fucked. Step 2. Dissuade him from using it by pointing the obvious. Azazel thought before glazing at Mickey and Goro Haida for an instant. Use the parents. Okay, seriously, calm down. That power will make you rampage. It's not something you can just control. Issei-kun, your parents are right here. If you lose control there in the splash zone, you could end up killing them in your rage. Azazel said before gesturing at the Haida elders. Hell, that power is literally fueled by your lifespan, and won't stop till it's all gone. Mickey, Goro, I understand that you have no reason to trust me, but at least stop your son for his own sake. At this information, the Haida parents looked concerned for their son. Issei, is what he's saying true? Goro asked. Son, if what he's saying is real, then please, maybe we can solve this in another way. Mickey pleaded. Issei turned his head and gave his parents a calm smile, reassuring them that everything was fine, that this whole thing wasn't putting him in danger. Mom, Dad, I know what I'm doing. This won't harm me, and I won't let you come to harm. Issei gave his father a pointed look. Trust me. The two locked eyes, a look of understanding that passed between them from their bond as father and son. Goro nodded to Issei. All right. Goro said. I'm leaving it to Issei. Goro? Mickey asked questioningly. Seriously? Azazel asked surprised. I'm literally the foremost expert on sacred gears. I've been studying them for literally millennia. I'm gonna put my faith in my son. Goro said with determination in his eyes. Mickey saw this and her gaze hardened with resolve as well. Welp, guess we're doing the suicidal thing. Issei held back a snort at his mother's show of support. Goro didn't. Okay. Very stupidly supportive parents. I am the guardian dragon of humanity, and that's still here. Also, wait, I have never heard that re-edition of the Juggernaut Drive chant. Azazel wasn't sure. It's not like he could remember every recorded version of the Berserker move chant. Generally, they were either the standard one, or a more personalized one for the user, but the fallen leader couldn't recall one that had Guardian or Humanity in them. Either way, really not the time. Alright, Plan B. Okay, you guys trust your son, over the literally thousands years old fallen here. Azazel rolled his eyes. Is he sulking? Mickey asked confused. I think he's sulking. Goro nodded. I'm not sulking. Azazel's eyebrow twitched. I will fuck up your marriage. Do not test me. He shook his head, and focused back on the conversation. Alright, so you can somehow use Juggernaut Drive without the, literal, suicide effects, a few weeks after awakening your sacred gear. Fine, but if we fight, your parents are still there, your house will be a wreck, if it's still standing after we're done. Azazel pointed out. Honey, Issei, he has a point. Mickey hesitantly said, much to the relief of Azazel. Thank fuck for women and their sensibilities. Now you boys follow along her honeyed words. Azazel thought. We can't exactly afford another house. Mickey finished her thought. Really? That's your concern? Azazel couldn't help but say, houses aren't cheap. What do you think the housing market is like these days? Mickey said heatedly. Ah. Right, Azazel nodded while holding his chin with a confident smile. Money is a thing humans have to worry about. Goro's eyebrow twitched. You know, that is something I can help with. You never have to have financial worries again, if we just talk normally, like I originally planned. A sly look came to Azazel's eyes. Not sure if I should do so after this hostile reception. Mickey, we'll figure something out. Goro said while side-hugging his wife. Also, I think I remember you eyeing my wife, while we were under hypnosis, and just dismissed it as my wife's beauty being appreciated. He narrowed his eyes. I just thought she looked beautiful for a woman her age. Azazel quickly said, as their concerns in the serious situation was a bit more lax than he expected. EW. Gross. Mickey deadpanned. Bitch. Azazel wanted to scream. Fuck him up, son. Mickey gave Azazel a thumbs down. Why the hell did she turn gangster all of a sudden? Azazel looked gobsmacked. I'm glad you guys are so supportive of your son even if the motive is a bit effy, but seriously, who has overtaken and overcome God's principle of domination? I have so many questions. Haida Issei. Azazel decided to just force himself to be formal and polite. while calculating how long it would take Vala to arrive, after he pressed the magical panic button. He's likely to arrive just as issei finishes his chant and begin transforming. I'd have to hightail it out of here either way. He thought, remembering the boy's conditions. I understand that you hold some animosity toward the fallen due to Rainier being a bad first impression of our race, but you can't simply paint us all with that brush. Do you really want to fight an entire faction that has lasted eons, and has fought in supernatural great war? You'd end up making enemies out of the devil race and other factions by default if you prove too powerful. Azazel tried to reason. Seriously, I just came to apologize and reach a peaceful accord here. So her name was Rainier, huh? Issei nodded to himself, a bit glad that little trivia was answered. My first impression of the supernatural world, specifically your race, was being tricked into going on a date with a girl who said she liked me, for some reason, but I'm a teenager, so I didn't question it. And after making me think she was happy the whole time and was glad to be besides me, she stabbed me in the stomach and left me to die, after ending the date at a spot usually young couples or lovers end up. He explained. And the funny thing is, she didn't kill me because she knew I had the boosted gear. She just thought I had a regular common sacred gear, which shouldn't have been something that's a danger to her or your faction, beyond something to be noted, or hold some basic interest. Instead, she took me on a date, made it seem like she was falling in love with me, then killed me for the lulz basically. She literally could have achieved the same result, by sniping me while I was walking on my way home from school. It's not like you fallen angels really care about human life or secrecy all that much, from what I've seen. No, she went about it the way she did for the hell of it. Those fucking dumbass. Azazel wanted to facepalm, but yeah, you're right. Maybe not all fallen angels are that casually cruel. Issei continued. Yes, that's what I'm saying. So then, their leader decides that the best way to approach me, if to invade my home uninvited and lay his hands on my parents. It doesn't matter that you think the hypnosis you used is inconsequential because it's weak and wouldn't have lasting impact. From my point of view, it's a threat, and I'm responding accordingly. Azazel internally winced, seeing how the things he and literally anyone else in the supernatural world did casually could be seen as a threat, when it's not intended to be. It was more of a social lubricant to move things along. Alright, I can see how that looks bad, but Azazel began. Honey, Goro said through gritted teeth, with a voice barely held back from shouting. Get the shotgun. He glared at the Grigori leader, enraged by what he just heard his son had went through. Mickey left. I understand that you guys are angry, but there's a reason why. Wait, you have a shotgun? Click-clack. Mickey returned, with a shotgun. Pointed at Azazel. Aren't the laws of Japan insanely strict on guns? Azazel asked. Hunting shotgun. Mickey answered. Huh. Okay. But still, that's not gonna do anything to me. Issei pointed behind him. Transfer. The shotgun transformed, turning into some kind of fantasy revised red shotgun. Okay, how? That's not how boosted gear's gift works, nor it being able to enchant items being one of its functions. Azazel nearly shouted from curiosity. I swear. Wait, it's still on. Azazel shouted at the countdown. Shouldn't it have been interrupted with him using another ability mid-chant? Thanks, son. No problem, Mom. Okay, this is all lovely, and it's nice how you're all supportive of each other. But can you please calm down, so we can talk like civilized people? Azazel asked. No. The Hayata household answered together. How about your dream? I heard you wanted a harem. Azazel tried a different angle. Nah, I don't really want that anymore. I'm going the monogamous route from now on. Issei shook his head. Seriously? Azazel cried out. Seriously? His parents shouted in more shock than the Grigori leader. Asia really is a good girl, Goro said in tears. She really was the answer to our prayers. Mickey echoed her husband's sentiments. Guys, really? Also, that's not really the case. Issei sighed in embarrassment but never took his eyes off Azazel. I swear to God, I'm going to fucking kill whoever was on information gathering, Azazel said to himself before taking one last look at the resolute looks of the Hayata household once they focused on him again. Azazel sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right. Negotiation have broken down. At the very least I should make sure he doesn't reach out to other factions. Scare him a bit so he'd turtle up, before working on politically isolating him. You know, just because you have the power of the Red Dragon, doesn't mean you should act like him. Appearing hostile to any perceived threat can be used against you. It can cause other faction leaders to be wary of you, and even see you as a threat to preemptively deal with. You want to live in peace, don't you? You can't do that if you have the reputation of a rampaging dragon while just being on your own, with no faction supporting you. You'd just be a thug to be put down. Azazel raised his hands up, placatingly. Since you want me to leave, I'll leave, but you really need to think on how you want to interact with the wider world. You can't just attack any problem you end facing. Issei gave a small smile. In my heart, how many fallen angels are there? 10 million? More? The Welsh Dragon Hero asked. Azazel snorted. I'm not telling you that. Oh, less. Good. Then fighting your faction is manageable. Issei sighed in relief, as he nodded to himself. Azazel raised an eyebrow, looked bewildered. Your heart rate beat differently just now. So I could tell. Of course, your numbers are likely far less than 10 million. You guys did fight a great war after all, and it's not like you can replenish your numbers that easy, given that normal angels are gonna be falling left and right after the war anymore. Issei said, Oh please, out of the 3 factions, the Grigori have the easiest time replenishing our numbers. Unlike the devils, we don't need evil peace, we can have kids the normal way. And as for heaven? You'd be surprised at how many angels still fall. Azazel smirked, then blinked in confusion at Issei's expression of surprise. Again, your heart rate, along with other stuff. I became quite good at catching lies. And I have to say, I was just shooting in the dark that last bit, didn't realize I got lucky. Issei said to himself, What are you talking about? Azazel asked. Yes, you guys have the easiest time replenishing your numbers, but I'm guessing that's in theory. In practicality, you guys probably don't have enough cohesion or cooperation to look after or care about half-fallen children as your people. Heck, you guys are too independent to stick together more than necessary. After all, you all rebelled for your freedom to do whatever you wanted, right? And as for angels, I caught that lie, not many fall anymore. Things reached an equilibrium. Issei smiled cheekily. This kid is dangerous. He's not just a musclehead. He's like Vala. Azazel's eyes widened for a second. Oh fuck, he and Vala are the same. For Azazel, it seemed like this generation's heavenly dragons are more talented and more dangerous than any of those that came before. They might not be the strongest yet, but given their ages, that would change in time. I see. Azazel sighed as the conversation reached its conclusion. I guess there's only one thing left to do. Tension was at an all-time high in the Haida household, and the countdown continued. Shall blaze dash. Azazel jumped out of his seat, his 6 pair of black wings unfolding from his back, and he flew out of the front door, nearly breaking it. After a few seconds, the Haida elders let out a breath in relief. Dear Issei, he's gone, Mickey said, lowering the magic dragonic shotgun. Oh good. I don't know what we would have done if the house was destroyed. Goro sighed. Wait, you said it would have been fine? Mickey blinked. I was acting brave. Goro gave a sheepish smile. Aw dear. You look so cool. The husband and wife hugged. Issei smiled at the scene, and he reined in his energy back, stood up and stretched. Issei blinked as he noticed several familiar auras approaching his home. Mom, Dad, we're gonna have guests soon. Don't worry, these ones are okay, Issei said, and no sooner did the words leave his mouth did Rias, her peerage and Asia burst through the door. Issei. Mr. and Mrs. Hayadu, are you all okay? Asia cried out in Italian, running into Issei's arms, as he hugged her and reassured her that everything's fine. Issei, what happened? Why is the general governor of the Grigori running out of your house? And what is that? Rias asked many rapid questions, in surprise, given the situation before focusing and pointing at the shotgun still in Mickey's hands. The 3 Hyadas looked at the enchanted weapon, then at each other, then back to Rias. It's a hunting shotgun, Goro said plainly. I have several questions. Rias found herself saying numbly. Well, Mickey spoke up, the Haida matriarch taking control of the situation. Why don't you all join us for lunch, and we can figure out what's going on about this whole situation? Mickey? Gora looked at her, the question of "are you sure" in his eyes. If issei says they're good people, I'll trust him. And Asia here seems to like them just fine. Mickey explained, they're good people. Issei nodded, which made the devil stand a bit straighter, feeling prideful yet bashful at the praise. Lunch at the Hayade house that day was a larger affair than usual. Above in the skies of Ko Town floated a silver-haired half-devil, observing the home of the Red Dragon Emperor. Vala Lucifer, holder of the White Dragon Emperor, watched as his adopted father, Azazel, made a fool of himself, then escape his rival's home. You really will not go confront the Red One? Even with him bearing his fighting spirit so readily against the scapegoat? Albion Gwyber, the White Dragon, asked. There was no need, Albion, Vala replied. Even though he began his juggernaut drive, there was not an ounce of killing intent in his actions. Had Azazel not panicked, he would have noticed the control Hayade issei conducted himself with. He said, haven't you noticed? His control was so precise, even his parents standing mere feet away didn't even feel his energy. The power of juggernaut drive isn't something you can just wield calmly. It's pure rampage and savagery. No, Hayade issei only intended to scare Azazel, and he fell for his bluff. Heh. The boy used his own lifespan to bluff. Drake's host this time is much crazier than I expected. Albion chuckled. So it seems. Vala smiled back, yet sadly he had to put a lid on his excitement. As much as he wanted to fight his destined rival, it didn't seem like now would be the time, with his friends and families get together. There would be other chances. Vala was not in a hurry. He watched as his rival's mother conversed with the Gremry devils. Vala snorted in amusement upon seeing the shotgun she strapped to her hips. He saw as Hayade's father talked with the devils, showing no fear, and only trust in his son's judgment. Vala's smile turned wistful, if but for a moment. His rival came from nothing. Just as ordinarily human family. But maybe that was the best origin of all, if it allowed him to grow to such heights of strength so quickly. Then Vala's gaze turned back to Haidu, and the familiar battle excitement returned. If his rival was this strong after 2 weeks, how about longer? How strong would issei Haidu be in a month? 3 months? A year? He really wanted to see that power. I don't think I could wait a year. A month is plenty, given his strength growth, so 2 more weeks. That should be enough, right? Or will his strength plateau soon? That last thought made him worry a bit. Vala watched the gathering of humans and devils a little bit longer, ignoring Azazel's texts to his phone asking where he was, or why he never showed up to the Hayade house. The human family and none were playing host to a group of devils. It almost seemed like the start of a joke, yet it simply looked like a happy gathering. I wonder though, Hayade using Juggernaut Drive as a bluff, is he really reckless or was he desperate? Albion thought out loud. He didn't look afraid. Then again, he didn't look like he wanted to fight. Do you think he might have had a backup plan rather than use Juggernaut Drive? Vala asked his dragon. There is no backup plan if you initiate Juggernaut Drive, Albion stated as matter of fact. Vala frowned slightly in worry. He really hoped that Hayade really was that strong, and not just someone weak but struggling and using everything in his arsenal. Not that would be bad, but it meant he would wait longer for his rival to grow into his strength. Truthfully, if he actually stuck around that long, I would have just switched to Balance Breaker at the last second. He didn't feel that strong as to warrant using JD. Shock swept through Vala and Albion. Vala's eyes widened as he quickly spun around to see his rival floating a few feet behind him, with red draconic wings, with the skin between the wings' finger segments replaced with fire. Hayade issei. Vala said his rival's name fiercely in a show of strength and as a manner of greeting. White Dragon Emperor, right? Issei, however, just had a cheerful smile on his face. Hayade issei. So you know me, but I don't know you. Although I have to say, I'm surprised someone like you is working for that sleazy magic car salesman, Azazel. Vala had to hold back a snort at that description of Azazel. It was too apt. Vala Lucifer, he said confidently as he crossed his arms. You are strong. He couldn't help but say, almost in relief. This close, he could feel that power lying in his rival under the surface. It seemed like Albion's assessment was wrong. hired to threaten Azazel with the Juggernaut drive simply because he could afford to. And I do not work for Azazel, we merely have aligned common interests. Lucifer? Issei caught on to that piece of information. Hilariously unfortunate family name, or actually related to the guy? He asked with a raised eyebrow. I am one of the bloodline of the original Satan Lucifer. He said back. Does me having inhumane blood and yet erping one of God's Longinus offends you? He grinned back, challengingly. Nah, just curious. Issei shook his head. Although the sacred gear system is either busted, or it considers anyone with even some human blood to be human enough. Which I guess is kind neat. Thus far in recent history, there have been many examples of those who are half human, being born with sacred gears. Vala confirmed as he nodded. Although there has yet to be a quarter human born with a sacred gear, so that's the cutoff as far as I'm aware. Neat, Issei nodded. So, I'm guessing you were Azazel's backup. Thanks for not busting into my house, repairing it would have been a pain, and slam into that obvious barrier? Vala smirked. Although testing its strength would have been interesting. I wonder how it would hold up to direct confrontation. It had already marked Azazel from what I noticed. Against you? Issei crossed his arm as well, giving Valley a once-over, evaluating his opponent's strength. Probably break, but should give me enough time to react. Issei said. And you know how restaurants and service places have ban lists? That's basically what Azazel is to the barrier now. Also the mark is to get a read on his location, and where his home is in turn. His home is in the Grigori headquarters in the heart of one of the most densely populated cities in the underworld. Vala said back with a smile. You won't be able to reach him without fighting every fallen within the underworld. Then it's a fair fight. Issei smiled back, before frown. No, wait, they'd still be at a disadvantage. Oh well, not my problem. Vala couldn't help but smile at his rival's attitude. Yes, that's how his dragon rival should be. Before Vala could demand a fight, his dragon couldn't hold back cutting in. So, you have awakened quite quickly this time, Drag. Albion said. One could almost see the grin in his voice. Usually even when your host awakens the boosted gear, it take you a while to arise from your slumber. Is the boy that talented, or were you still enraged at your last user's loss? Ha! That was a draw and you know it, Albion. Drag said, chuckling. Yours seems strong too. He took note of Vala, making the half-devil smirk briefly. As for my boy, well, in a manner of speaking you can consider him talentless, but you can also consider him a genius. Are you on my side or not? Issei said back. Haha, well, he did have the smallest starting potential of all my wielders, but he has the greatest growth potential of them all. Drake just continued. So you can say he's the perfect wielder for me. One that embodies all my strengths. Ah, Issei rubbing the back of his head, looking aside. Thanks, you sound proud there, Drake. Albion noted. Almost like a doting father. How unlike you to grow so attached to your wielder, and so quickly. Yeah. Quickly. Drake said, as if voicing away from the conversation, not elaborating. So, are you here to battle me, Hyde Issei? Vala said, getting right to the point. No, 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 Issei waved his hands in front of him. My house has guests here, I can't stick that long, he said. Besides, if you fight me, wouldn't that be like a statement from the Grigori declaring official hostilities against me? That would be annoying. Vala held his chin in thought. We could always say it's a spar. As long as no one kills the other it should be fine. And if one of us ends up dying, welp, the winner deals with the consequences then. Oi, treat your death more seriously, won't you? Issei said worryingly at Vala's flippant attitude. A smirk grew on Vala's face. My death? Do you really think you can defeat me, Haida Issei? Vala said. Dude, call me Issei. Saying my full name all the time, like you're from the government, isn't menacing, it's annoying. Issei said back, before gaining a more somber look. And if we fought, you wouldn't die. Because I am that strong to ensure you live. I don't think I can defeat you, I know I can. Vala grinned back viciously, his aura and power rising almost as if he couldn't contain himself. Why don't we find out? He said, forgetting that they had agreed to postpone their battle. You should hold back your wielder, Albion. Draghi spoke up. This close to the Hyatta's home, partner won't hold back. Then why don't we fly up? Albion said back. It will be like our battles of old. Tension began to rise as it seemed like the inevitable battle of when two dragons meet was about to occur. A clash of wills that could not be overturned. No, and yet, one of the heavenly dragon did turn away. Let's us meet at a later date as agreed. It felt like a storm was going to begin before it stopped prematurely. Valet, feeling Albion's shock through their bond, took the winds out of his sails, long enough to calm down and be patient. I expected your wielder to be the one to suggest that, as he looks like a level-headed one. But not you. Albion stated in shock, overcome by intrigue. Normally I would just say you've grown soft, Albion said. That usually would be his taunt to his rival, but he could feel the red dragon's aura. An aura as familiar to him as his own, from how many times they, or the wielders of divine dividing and boosted gear, have clashed over the eons and eras. Drake's aura was sharp. Sharper and more dense and vicious than he could ever recall it, except maybe when they were still alive, before they were slain and sealed. How did this wielder affect him this much? Albion wondered. Or did something else happen? I guess I'm not in a rush, Drake said. Or maybe I'm not seeing the point in our battles as I used to. What does that mean, Drake? Albion demanded, yet his rival was silent this time. Phone number, issei said as the silence stretched for a while. What? We need each other's contacts, so we can plan that fight away from everyone and not cause a mess, issei said. Ah, right, Valet replied. The two Dragon Emperor exchanged contact, with issei casually waving Valet off, so he can return to his family lunch, without seeming to have been gone for too long. I'll call you at Golden Week. Let's see if we can plan something for then, issei said with a wave as he began to fly back down. Somehow our destined clash suddenly doesn't feel as epic anymore, Valet said as he looked at his phone. Drake, Albion spoke one last time. You changed. It's not even like you were taunting as you usually would. All our battle, even with our wielder inheriting our spirits and destiny, and you're saying it's all amounted to nothing. Albion roared toward the end. Valet found himself very interested in the red dragon's reply. Why would the Welsh dragon turn away from the vanishing dragon? It felt like the destined battle of the heavenly dragon successors wouldn't be right if the issei closed his house's back door with a soft click, took a quick look around and didn't see anyone. He let out a sigh and turned to return to the living room where his parents and the Gremry peerage were staying. Just as he turned the corner next to the kitchen, Asia came out of said kitchen. Mr. Issei. Asia almost jumped in surprise. Ah, hey Asia. Did I take long? Bathroom, you know. The food and drinks were a lot, he said, rubbing his belly and chuckling. Asia tilted her head. But I went there first. No one was using the bathroom? She commented. There was no suspicion or doubt in her tone, just confusion. Issei grimaced, as the guilt hit him. Right, sorry. He let out a sigh. Truth is, there was an unexpected guest that came with creepy fallen guy. I went to have a talk since he didn't feel hostile. Might have made a friend, or a rival, or both. I didn't say anything, because I didn't want to worry anyone. Sorry. He finished with a sheepish smile. Mr. Issei. You should have said something to me or your mother. Asia scolded with an adorable pout, as she put her hands on her hips. You disappeared suddenly. It was too long that it was noticeable. I was worried something might have happened. Issei let out a chuckle while looking bashful, as he rubbed the back of his head. You're right. Sorry, Asia, he said while holding a hand up to placate her. Immediately Asia lost her fierce expression, as she leaned in to look at him with concern. Are you all right? Did everything turn out okay with that new person? She asked. Yeah. His name is Valet. He seemed like a pretty okay guy. Issei replied with a relaxed smile. All right. Asia stood back and nodded. We should get back, but please remember to take care of yourself, Mr. Issei. Asia began to head back. Asia, you don't have to call me Mr., you know. It feels weird when we're the same age, Issei said following her. Asia nodded with a happy smile. Then let's go, Issei. By the way, Mom Mickey noticed you were gone for too long, and said she wants to have words with you once the guests are gone. Issei stumbled before he continued walking, suddenly feeling dread on his shoulder, as he returned to the living room, and seeing his mom smile at him. "Ah, I'm in for it once Rias and the others leave." And Issei, "Don't worry. The second we get back to the club, I'll contact my brother and inform him of this situation. That should give some headache to that old crow," Rias said as she stood at Issei's door to leave, even though she and her peerage would just use a teleportation spell after leaving the Haida residence. "Really, I'm sorry that your experience with the supernatural side, with our world, has been troubling for you till now." The red-haired Gremry princess actually looked remorseful as she said that. "Senpai, seriously, it's fine. You can't control what other people do, that's just how things are. The best we can do is prepare and be ready for next time," Issei said before a thoughtful look came to him. I'm gonna need to make some protective charms for my parents in Asia," he said to himself. "Eh? You can make protective charms?" "No, never mind that." Rias shook her head, before looking at Issei intensely. "Tell me what you need. Whatever materials they are, I'll get them." Issei was taken aback by how serious and earnest Rias was. He held back a smile as he didn't want to seem like he was finding her actions funny. That sincerity of hers was kinda charming. "Please! Don't hold back. Whatever you need, please tell me. I won't fail in my duty as Koa's supervisor this time, and I will definitely keep your home safe," Rias said with determination. "Oh my, Bucho is pumped up," Aquino said with a smile. Issei chuckled at the devil's actions. Okay, he finally said. "Although I'm looking for our prayer beads bracelet. I'm not sure if you'll be able to physically handle an item like that, since it would be holy. I think, oh." Rias's eyes lit up. "That's no problem. Holding stuff like prayer beads or crosses normally aren't a problem, unless they are really blessed. Even then it's like holding something hot, not lethal. For the most part, at least." Also, Rias said with excitement. "Aquino is a Miko, so we can definitely make you some high-quality prayer beads." "Wait, seriously?" Issei's eyes widened as he looked at his other senpai in new light. "Oh?" Aquino smiled as she placed a hand on her cheek. "I suppose should show my cute Kohai how capable I am." "I'll be counting on you, Aquino-senpai." Issei smiled and nodded back. Fuff, Aquino let out her iconic laugh, where it sounds like she knows something others don't. "Then we'll get going now." "I'll call as soon as everything's done, Issei," Rias said with her usual cheerful grin. The Gremry peerage said their goodbyes, and after leaving the Haida house, were engulfed by a teleportation magic circle and disappeared back to the ORC building. Issei let out a sigh as his guests now being gone, and closed his house's front door. "Issei," Goro's voice called from behind Issei. He looked back to see his parents giving him a more somber and serious look, while Asia looked confused. "Son, I know you said you needed time, and your mother and I were more than willing to give it, but given everything you said, that fallen angel girl stabbed you and left you for dead?" Goro tried to explain the complex, heavy feeling that he and his wife were experiencing upon learning that information. He wanted to hug his son, to hold him in his arms and never let him out or experience danger and pain again. Yet another part of him was proud, yet concerned about how strong he had gotten, about how old his eyes looked, and the worry of what could have possibly resulted in that. "Issei," Miki went to her son, holding one of his hands and rubbing his back. "Can you please tell us what happened? We want to help." And the Haida parents decided to do so, even without needed to verbally tell each other, was to learn and understand what happened to their son. That's how they could start helping him. Asia came to Issei's other side to hold his other hand, mirroring Miki, to tell him she was there for him. "Okay." Issei let out a long sigh. "Okay, let me get some stuff from my room first. Visual aid should help a bit." Issei's parents nodded and went to the living room with Asia. Issei went to his room, then returned with a box of clay figures, and some unused clay. "Oh my!" Miki had a hand to her mouth, as she smiled in pride. "Those are really well made. Issei, you have to make some commission with these. You can really turn this hobby into a side job, maybe in the summer." Issei chuckled and said back, "Whoa! Is that a dragon?" Goro asked as he extended a hand to the giant black-colored dragon with neon green crest in its chest. Issei nodded, and Goro delicately picked up the clay dragon model from the table, inspecting it. Is this Drake? A snort was heard from Issei's arm. Please. 1. My scales are red. 2. I am way more awesome than that loser. Drake said cockily. Really? Issei chuckled. I distinctly remember that you wanted me to start hang out with Siegfried more often, after that Rheingold hunt just in case Fafnir turned up again. Said it was one of the best dragon fights you got into in a long while. Look, without Albion or his wielder around, I was getting dragon fighting withdrawal. Okay. Drake exclaimed. What happened to that whole I'm wiser now speech you gave him a while ago? Issei said in shock. Both can be true. Drake said back, sounding petulant. Issei laughed, and his parents and Asia chuckled at the pair's antics. Okay, Issei said, as they all sat down, and Issei placed a figure of a fallen angel in a slutty bikini outfit on the coffee table. It all began when this fallen angel, which I know learned is named Rainier, asked me out on a date. You already heard the details, but long story short, I died. In a technical sense. Issei, what do you mean? Goro asked warily, putting the clay dragon model back in place. Well, basically my soul left my body. Issei paused, trying to think on how to say the next part, before shrugging and going for it anyways. But my body was alive, and so was my soul, as it was still connected to it. Thus technically, I was still alive. Issei had to repeat himself for Asia's sake, but sometimes he would switch to English, as his parents knew the language a bit, before switching back to Japanese, when he needed to clarify something in detail. So the next part is a bit confusing, Issei said with a smile. Basically, Issei placed a figurine of a girl with a sassy grin. His first clay model, now colored with the girl's uniform being black and white, and her hair being an orange shade of red. My soul ended up in another world, placed in a body made of magic, as I helped this girl, he said with a nostalgic, loving smile. A smile that had his dad's eyes widened in understanding, and his mother gasp in recognition. A smile filled with love. A girl named Fujimaru Ritsuka, who was tasked with saving her world that was already destroyed, while Goro said in shock, But wait, how can you save her world if Mickey added, My God. Asia's eyes were in near tears just from hearing about the Master of Chaldea's situation. You're not gonna skip over the whole Prince Hydro part, are you? Drake said with a smirk in his tone. God damn it, Drake! Issei exclaimed. Look, it's not important, and it doesn't add much to the story. It's really not that relevant. Prince Hydro? Asia and Mickey tilted their head in confusion. Hydro. Goro said the name a few times, tasting it on his tongue. Is that westernized attempt at Haida? He said before an amused smirk slowly rose on his face. Issei, did you try and play yourself as a prince for this girl? No. Issei denied. Yes. Drake insisted. Issei? Tell mommy the truth. Mickey said with a knowing look. Okay, look, technically yes, but it wasn't really intentional. Issei quickly tried to explain. I'm starting to notice a lot of technicalities in this story. Goro said with a smirk matching his wife. It's all that shitty flower wizard's fault. Issei stood up and cried out, hands slammed on the table dramatically. Ha 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 ha. And thanks again for hearing me out, Oniai-sama. Rias said to her brother via her cell phone. No, I'm glad you're reaching out to me for this, Rias. The gentle voice of Surzek, the Satan Lucifer, answered her. I'm proud that dealing with this situation so quickly right away, rather than waiting to deal with it on your own. This really shows how much you mature with your judgment. Rias looked down, her dejection clear in her voice. Rias? Came the concerned voice of Surzek. I failed him once, Oniai-sama. I know I can't protect every human in Ko. And I know that being the supervisor for the magic side of thing here doesn't mean that I'm responsible for every human life, but they are people living in my territory. I should at least make them safe from the magic side of things, yet I couldn't do that, and he almost died to a fallen. Rias said, frowning. And it wasn't just some random person, but someone so close to me. Someone that goes to school with me. I should have been more attentive. Rias, there was a proud smile in Surzek's voice. At hearing the sense of responsibility Rias grew. I understand your worry, but that's the thing about ruling and responsibility. You can't do everything, no matter how strong you are. So you just get better and find other solutions. Delegate if you have too many tasks. If there are weaknesses and protections, patch them up. If you need to deal with something without a fight, find the right information. You are still learning, and that's the point of giving you and Sona that position in Ko, he said to cheer her. The important thing is to not let stumbling one time stop you from getting up and trying again, doing better. You're right, thanks, Oni-sama, Rias said with a cheerful grin. Surzex had to hold back skiing at his Riatan, making her cute anime noises again. It looked like he succeeded in rising her spirits. Now, the Satan Lucifer's voice took on a more serious tone that Rias took note of. Rias, about the Red Dragon Emperor, given his unexpected strength, and from what I understand from you, his stance to remain independent, correct? Yes. Rias nodded. Then I need you to prepare for the possibility that Ko might not be under yours and Sona's control in the near future. Surzex said. What do you mean? Rias blinked a few times at that. Ko might turn from a devil territory to a neutral territory, Surzex said. To clarify, because of Issei Hayata's unexpected strength, politically it would seem like you're invading his territory, by declaring it as your own. Doing this, even if Issei himself doesn't care to declare Ko his own, could draw hostilities, either from beings that want to get him to their side, or those that want to get on his good side by challenging you for trying to usurp his hometown. But me and Sona were already ruling Ko before Issei found out he was the Red Dragon Emperor. Rias protested. I'm afraid none of that matters. Not to those who would view the situation like that from the outside. If you could get him in your peerage, then nothing would have changed. But given that you can't, Surzex trailed off, then me and Sona can't truly claim that we are the supervisors of Ko, rather than two upstarts acting out on a dragon's territory? Rias said with a frown. What about having Issei as my contracted magician? He was open to that idea. That might work, or it might backfire, Surzex said with an apologetic smile, to which Rias groaned. It might seem like Issei works for you, or it might seem like you work for him, as he's the stronger party. He explained. If you don't find some way to definitively cement your ownership of Ko, then it would turn into a neutral territory due to the uncertainty that, are you and Sona really ruling it, or just being allowed to run around by the Red Dragon Emperor? Of course, there's the option of actually having Issei declare Ko as his territory, thus cementing it as a dragon territory, but I might do that out of spite if too many people come to Ko and annoy me. Rias ended up saying, ah. Surzex chuckled while feeling a bit worried about his impulsive little sister. Please don't actually do that. Okay, Oni-chan, Rias said back with a wide grin. Rias, do you have your fingers crossed behind your back? I have no idea what you're talking about, Rias said quickly. Rias, Surzex said with exasperation. I'm really glad for all your help, Oni-sama. Say hi to Grafia and Milikas for me. Okay, bye. Rias hanged up the call. She let out a sigh at that part being done, then looked around to see her peerage trying to look busy, while Aquino gave her a deadpan stare. Oh, shut up, like you wouldn't do that too, she said with a pout that just caused her queen to giggle at her king's antic. Rias then called Issei to give him the good news, and she might have to sit down with him and Sona to figure out this whole Koa's real ownership thing later on. The phone rang, but the person who picked up wasn't the Red Dragon Emperor. Hey Issei, so good news. I called my brother, and he said he and Serafal, that's the Satan responsible for foreign affair, will handle things, so you don't need to worry about the fallen angels acting against you. Rias quickly said the good news. Really, Rias-chan? That's great. It was Miki, the Red Dragon Emperor's mom, that answer. Miki-san? I'm glad you're happy, Rias said. Is Issei not available? He's just busy telling us about his iSky adventure and all, Miki said casually. Mom! Come on, don't just blab that out, Issei's sulky voice said in the background. She's a devil, she probably heard stories like that hundreds of times, that'd be bored to hear another one, Miki said back. Really don't think that's the case, Issei said back. Anyways, thanks for all your help, Rias-chan. Please continue to be friends with my trouble-finding son, Miki said with a smile. Mom! Came Issei's embarrassed cry. So you're telling me the Ark plan didn't work? But then how did you survive Heracles? Goro's voice said in the background. No, it worked, but that's only after I overcame my fear and unlocked Balance Breaker for the first time. Then I was able to grab the tree holding the Ark and hit Heracles with it. Issei explained. And that's when we began our counterattack on the Argonauts. Whoa! Goro and Asia's voices cheered in the background. Goodbye, Rias-chan, Mickey said cheerfully and closed the call. While wait, Rias said too late, then looked at the phone looking lost. Silence hit the room like a physical force. Every member of the ORC stopped what they were doing and focused on their king. Rias Aquino said slowly, extending a hand to grab her king. I know what you've heard is very surprising, and a big revelation, but… Rias moved. The windows slammed open with her will. Caught her, Kaneko said as she had grabbed the flying Rias' legs. Bucho, please calm down. Kiba, who had grabbed Rias from her weight, exclaimed. The ice sky is real. Rias shouted from the bottom of her soul. Rias! Rias, listen to me. You can't just barge in on the Hayate house. They just went through a supernatural being doing that. Aquino tried to make Rias see reason. Issei did. He went to another world. Rias cried out with excitement, joy, despair, and tears at realizing that one of her most favorite genre is real, and that she wasn't there to hear about it. Let me go! Let me go! I want to know his backstory. Rias, you can ask him tomorrow at school. Aquino started to use her magic, as Rias started trying to teleport. No! I want to know! I want to know now! Don't make me miss the exposition! No! Isakawai, it was a battle in the Occult Research Clubhouse to contain their frenzied president. You're telling me that filthy human is strong enough to make the Grigori governor retreat? The voice was filled with so much vitriol that would usually be followed by pain upon the ones who caused it. The servants had long since been broken emotionally to show fear at their master's anger. Yet their learned tactics at not drawing their master's anger or attention in his irritated moods was due to the many times they have experienced it. Yes, my lord. It would see the Red Dragon Emperor of this era has had enough time to grow considerably in strength. The former Holy Maiden, now Peerage Queen, told her king, useless. Useless. The Astaroth devil throwing his power around without a care. Most of the peerage wasn't completely harmed, as they weren't in the direction of the blast. But the one unlucky piece, who was kneeling obediently like her peerage sisters, took the full brunt of the demonic power and was blown back, slamming into the wall of the room. She grunted in pain, but was used to this level of it. She wasn't too injured, thus went back to her previous spot and began healing herself. Obstacle after obstacle. I swear if it's not one thing it's another. Why can't those idiots just do things correctly? He said with a look of disgust, before sitting back in his chair and letting out a sigh. Then again, they were fallen angels. Can't expect those bird brains to follow a plan even if you laid out the bread crumble for everything for them. He narrowed his eyes and thought. The Red Dragon Emperor is the compassionate type, right? He said as his queen nodded, while keeping her gaze down to the ground, as he didn't give her permission to look at him. All right then, let's play on that. On Asia's safety. The Astaroth devil smiled. It was a vile thing. I might have to contact them though, he said thoughtfully. Them, my lord? The Astaroth queen asked. Those of Chaos, the king devil clarified. After all, since the Red Dragon Emperor is trying play with the grown-ups, let's show him how big the world really is. As a precaution, of course, so he doesn't bite off more than he could chew. So he could see that Asia is safer with me. He grinned. Aren't I so kind, Emily? He said to his queen. Lord Diodora Astaroth is the kindest person in the world. Diodora's queen replied blankly, much to her master's amusement. Issei looked around as he was eating breakfast. After everything that happened yesterday, he was now just eating breakfast with his mom around the dining table. The return to normalcy was almost surreal. His dad had left for work early, saying he was going to be busy for the next week, as to prepare to take his vacation days. Asia was sleeping in. Issei supposed his stories did keep her up late last night, and she kept wanting to know what happened next on his adventure. Then again, his parents were the same. He abridged a lot of it obviously. focused more on the silly moments, while underplaying the danger of the cool moments. Asia was enthralled, although he supposed a big part of that was hearing tales about actual saints and saintesses. His parents noticed how he adjusted his stories, but didn't say anything. Issei was grateful for that. He wasn't sure about getting into the details of the dangers of the singularities, or actually tell them about the hardships he went through. He worried and scared them enough as it was from just what happened with the fallen angel Rainier a while ago. Issei, his mother spoke. Do you think Rias-chan would teach me some magic? Issei blinked, then looked up from his meal. After a beat, he gave her a deadpan look. Mom, seriously, magic isn't something to learn to make chores, and traveling to the store easier, he said. It's not just about that. Mickey pouted, then a small smile came to her face. I wondered if there are spells to talk to people in other worlds, she confessed. Fujimaru Ristuka, she said with a smile. I wanted to thank that girl for bringing my son back to me, Mom. Issei couldn't help but smile bashfully back, touched by Mickey's words. Also for making my son into a man, she said proudly. Mom! Issei cried out red-faced. Mickey Haida laughed at her son's embarrassment, then teased him even more upon realizing that he never denied the claim. Issei walked into Ko Academy expecting his day to be normal as going to school with a group of devils can be. And no, this is a dream. A nightmare. It has to be. Rias Wanisama, why, with Hayadu of all people, was this his plan all along? To play cool and mysterious and learning Y languages so he can seduce Rias Wanisama? And on the gossip of the student of Ko, specifically the girls, went on. Rias. Issei spoke through a stiff smile, words going through his teeth. What are you doing? He said to the redhead devil hanging off his arm, smiling brightly at him. Issei. Buddy. Pal. My besto friendo in all the worlds. How are you on this fine day? Rias said, her cheerful smile. It was practically sparkling. No, it really was sparkling. Issei blinked at that. Are you feeling okay? Issei hesitantly asked. Exuberantly. She continued smiling. Right. Issei said warily. Out of curiosity, do you have any magic that hides something about your appearance, or that you're a devil or anything like that? No. Why? Rias tilted her head. As the two had been walking, and were now within the school building in a place without many prying eyes that could notice anything unusual about the duo. More than usual. Magic break. Issei gently but firmly took Rias's hand and removed it from around his arm. Rias felt a magic aura wash over her and nothing. Was that supposed to do something? She blinked in confusion. Just making sure you weren't under mind control or anything like that, Issei said with a worried smile. It seemed like Rias's odd new attitude was entirely her own. Oh, that is just silly. She laughed and waved him off. Say, did I ever tell you I used to travel the world when I was younger? Why don't we hang out and exchange stories about our isekai? I mean our adventures, travels, Issei sighed. So that's what this is about. Damn it, Mom. FIA-chan. 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 Emergency. 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 The Satan Lucifer was practically breaking the button to call on his queen, wife and head maid, as well as using the spell to summon her to his office. Graphia Lucifuge appeared instantly from a summoning circle, took one look at her king and held back a sigh. It would be unprofessional for a maid to sigh at her master doing something idiotic. She knew Surzex for centuries now, so she knows when he's doing something stupid. My lord, what could possibly be the reason for your panic? Something that a Satan should never let themselves be overtaken by, she asked while advising him at the same time, with the patience of a wife of many years. Ryotan's alarm is gone. She could be in danger. She could be attacked by one of the many tentacle monsters that infest Japan. That's not a thing, Graphia interjected. Or being seduced by the reincarnation of Casanova, Lord Lucifer, Graphia said firmly while messaging her temple. There has not, and have never been a spirit inheritor or a reincarnation of Giacomo Casanova. It doesn't exist. But what happened to Ryotan? Surzex said frantically. We need to go save her. No, I will go. You will not. Graphia said firmly to her king, who was now pouting. She sighed. I will go investigate and see what happened, and if there is reason for worry. Thus far, based on the magic of the barrier around Ko Academy, Rias-sama is currently at school. They're doing it at school! Surzex cried out, looking scandalized. No one is having at school. After investigating and observing the magic recording items at Ko Academy, Graphia found out what happened. CCTV may not be allowed at Ko Academy to protect the privacy of the students, but for the Devil's supervisors, she needed to have surveillance of their territory so they won't be caught unaware, and so they can review events if need be. Lord Surzex, I really think this is an overreaction, Graphia said while holding back a sigh. You had meetings today, yes. This one. We called ahead. We have an appointment, and they're expecting us. Surzex said resolute, as he and his queen stood in front of a simple 2-story home. The Hayate household. The Satan Lucifer rang the bell, and a few minutes later, Miki Hayate opened the door. Ah, Mr. Zex? She asked. Rias' brother? It's Surzex, one word, madam. He said back politely. This is my wife, Graphia Lucifuge. Oh, apologizes. She opened the door fully, welcoming them. Come on in. Gora came quickly when I got your call, she said as the two devils followed her into her humble home. As they all gathered at the living room, the parents of issei and Risa's family greeted each other. Ah, Hayate Goro, nice to meet you both. Surzex Lucifer, the honor is mine, and I'm sorry for dropping in on short notice like this. The two shook hands and sat down face to face, while their significant other was by their side. No. I understand how important family is. So what is this involving Rias? Is everything okay? Gora asked, still wondering on what made the Lucifer panic so much to call them like this, and request this meeting. This is something that you are likely aren't to know, but my sister is engaged. Surzex started explaining. Congratulations, Mickey said with a happy nod. Riser Phoenix is an entitled little shit, and Riatan hates him. If I have anything to say about it, before he could so much as touch a single hair on her head, I will. Graphia loudly cleared her throat. It's a complicated family situation, and we all just hope for the happiness of our family members. Of course. Gora nodded, with Mickey agreeing, completely understanding Surzek's position. Thus, until the matter of the betrothment is settled, one of the conditions of the contract between the Gremery family and the Phoenix is on Rias's chastity to ensure the bloodline's fidelity and purity. Surzex explained. Wow, that sounds so aristocratic. Mickey commented. After the civil war that ravaged our race, the devils needed a way to ensure our population doesn't fall to the point of erasure. While evil pieces offered a method for our race's revitalization, a lot of those of the Pillar family still view the blood purity of our race as being paramount. Graphia added context on why would devils use arranged marriages. I see, Gora nodded. You have your own difficulties, he said with sympathy. But I'm not sure what does that do with issei, or how we could help. Surzex and Graphia looked at each other in silent communication for a moment, before the Queen went ahead with the talk. To ensure that the Gremery side upholds their end of the marriage contracts, I was tasked by the Lord and Lady Gremery to cast a spell to inform me should Lady Rias engaged in Graphia politely cough. Recreational activities with a partner. Oh, Mickey said, sharing a blush with her husband, who was trying not to giggle. She pinched his leg under the table so he wouldn't laugh. I see, Gora tried to say, and your son had removed that alarm spell. Surzex immediately said, not able to keep his calm any longer. So I would like to know, what is your son, the Red Dragon Emperor's, intention to my little sister? Mickey blinked and raised an eyebrow. She looked at Graphia, who nodded while showing embarrassment and apologizing for her husband's action with her expression. Mickey turned to Gora to ask him on how to respond. Mr. Lucifer, are you accusing my son of doing something improper to your sister? I'll have you know, he might be a pervert, but he's completely clueless on how to do anything to woo a girl. Gora said back, just as heated as Surzex. That is not helpful, dear, Mickey said. Besides, she's the devil. Isn't it more likely she's seducing him? What is your sister's intentions for my son? Gora said back. That's racist profiling. And I'll have you know Riatan is as innocent as church nun. So completely drowned in novels, or in this case, hentai. Mickey and Graphia both sighed openly, shared a look, then reached over and twisted their husbands' ears to get them to stop and behave. Ow, ow, ow. Honey, Fie-chan, please stop using your full strength. It's gonna rip off, it's gonna rip off. Back at Co-Academy, Issei was heading in the lunch break to Rias to talk to her. His home protection wards had been updated since Azazel's visit, and now he could observe from the barrier to see who was around or visited his house, and if there's anything to worry about. He saw Rias's brother and his maid arrive. They didn't trigger the barrier's alarm or defenses, so they weren't there with malicious intent, but the comedic argument between his dad and Rias' brother, while his mom and the maid manhandled the guys, was confusing. Rias. Issei greeted Rias on the roof, where she and her peerage ate lunch. Ah, Issei. Did you come to continue our talks of exchanging stories? Rias said with a wide smile, while her peerage around her sigh, or giggle in Akino's case. We never started. Issei shook his head. Anyways, why is your brother at my house? And why is he saying I'm seducing you? Silence filled the air. Akino began giggling, and even Kaneko and Kiba tried to hold back snorting and smiling. Rias face-bombed. Damn it, Oniai-sama. Later in the day, after school was over, Issei went home with Asia and Rias in tow. Upon entering his house, Issei found it noisy. He went to the dining room with his friends with him, and was welcomed by a bizarre situation. Goro Hayadu and Serzex Lucifer were having a drunken ramble with one another. His father might be trying to comfort Satan, who was whining and half crying. His mother and the maid, Lucifer's wife and supposed the underworld's strongest queen, were comforting their respective man. Mickey looked exasperated, and while Graphia held a stoic expression, Issei had an inkling she felt the same. Like, this job is thankless. Literally thankless. You'd think being one of the rulers of the devil race would be a great prestige, but it feels like nothing but wrangling a bunch of superpowered toddlers on a leash. The drunken Serzex complained. Oof. I know that feeling. The drunk Goran nodded in sympathy. Well, not that same feeling. I'm not an executive manager, but a middle manager. I try to be nice to my guys since I was by their side not long ago, but it's annoying how they went from hey Goro, buddy, to Guru. Buddy, can you do me a favor? And I don't want to be the asshole, but no, you don't get to take a half day because you're stressed. We're all stressed. And my bosses, holy shit. Stop getting into my shit on how an order is made. You want it, you'll get it on time. You getting into the details is making everyone's job harder and lousier. The two seemed to have been going at this for a while. There were 2 bottles next to them. The one near Goro was some expensive sake he kept for special occasions, and the one near Serzex had some unfamiliar language on it to Issei and some beast symbol as a logo. And then there's my family. I love them all, but I really wish they would do stuff to Anto fight with each other. I don't want my parents and Riatan to fight. And my wife is too cold. Too focused on her maid play. Said Serzex. That's hot. Goro replied. Mickey blushed while looking at Graphia with a sympathetic, embarrassed smile. Graphia was now blushing too, and slowly raising her hand to face palm. No. She wants me be dominating, but I don't want to hurt her. I just want to make slow love to her. Man, nice. As the 2 men's discussion veered into a more sensitive subject, Issei finally reacted. Welp. I'm gonna go outside and look at the sky or make more figurines or something. Issei said. I'll join you. Rias deadpanned and speed walked behind Issei. Hey Issei. Goro finally noticed his son and waved at him. Hey Dad. Issei smiled and waved back. Riatan. Serzex shouted cheerfully, before his face turned serious, while retaining his drunken flush. Are you doing the with this dragon boy? Just so you know, dragon pheromones aren't real, don't fall for them. And if they are, I'd count them as a rape drug. I don't care what anyone else says. Issei and Rias were gobsmacked at the nonsense the Satan Lucifer was saying. Lord Lucifer. The auras of powerful beings being seen as attractive is a normal facet of life. Superpowers is a rape drug. Goro cried out in shock. Someone needs to do something. Serzex, a super devil, one of the strongest beings in the world, shouted in shock and outrage. Power being seen as attractive doesn't make them a rape drug. Grafia sighed and went on to try and calm the two down. Grafia, I'll see you and Oni-sama at dinner, Rias said to her older sister figure as she turned to leave. Of course, Rias-sama. The strongest maid nodded. Grafia-san, I need to go start working on lunch. Are you going to be fine alone? Mickey asked, deciding to escape the madness for a little while. I'll help out. Asia, who had been quiet thus far, followed Mickey into the kitchen. No, it's fine. Thank you, Mickey-san. I'm sorry that I cannot go help out as well. Grafia nodded with a smile in return. I'll ensure they don't mix up each other's bottles. Issei and Rias wisely left quietly, lest they be drawn into the drunken shenanigans. Rias found Issei in the back garden of his house. There was a plastic table and some chairs for place. Issei had a box clay figurines, some paint and paint brushes on the table in front of him. He took the figurine, a girl with a unique white uniform, with black belts above and below her chest, highlighting it. Another belt was on her waist. Her red, distinct auburn red hair was the first colored. Issei very carefully painted the rest of the girl's body, before moving on to her uniform. Is that Fujimaru? Rias asked, wondering if that's the girl Issei met in the other world. Very quickly she composed herself to sound a bit more neutral, when she remembered how he reacted to being asked about her, back when she first had him come to the ORC house. You really paid a lot of attention to the details on her, she said, noticing the other models of Fujimaru. Some held a mischievous pose looking like she's trolling someone. Another held her in a hyped-up pose. And there was another one with a serious face, as she held a commanding pose. Rias noticed this consistent red tattoo on the girl figurine's right hand. Obviously, Issei replied. I'm surprised you didn't take liberties and exaggerate some of her features like her breasts, she said jokingly. Nope, Ritsuka is perfect with her 32C and she doesn't need anything more than that. Besides, it complements her figure and her gremlin personality. Smug short stacks are where it's at. Although technically she's not that short, I'm just taller than her, Issei cried out passionately, before blinking and regaining his calm demeanor. He coughed and tried to play it off. Ahem. I mean, it would be disrespectful since she's a real person, so I have to faithfully recreate what she looks like accurately. Also, please don't mention what I said. Issei heard giggling from next to him. He looked to the side to see Rias holding her stomach and covering her mouth, while looking away. I am sorry. She laughed some more, trying to look calm. But for a moment there, you were the normal Issei I've been more familiar with, Rias said. Not that I don't like the new Issei, but knowing the cute perverted one is still there is kinda reassuring. Gee, thanks, I guess. He chuckled. I mean, it's not like I don't recognize the beauty of boobs, but if it's not her, I don't really bother noticing it that much, Issei said with a melancholic look, staring at the sky, at something far away and at nothing. Okay, wow. Now I really want to know more about this Fujimaru Ritsuka, Rias said excitedly. So, before with the phone book, you were looking for her here in our world? Was the Sky a dream world or an alternate reality? Issei went to answer but paused at a thought that crossed his mind. Not a dream Sky. Technically. I mean, it wasn't a dream world. Although I did end up in those at times. He muttered at the end to himself. What do you consider as alternate realities? Like Shaman Emperor and Reaper? Or Shaman Emperor and Final Treasure? What about Final Treasure and Fairy Glow? Issei thought out loud. Ria's eyes seemed to shine with excitement at the anime discussion, while holding her chin, intrigued at the thought. Final Treasure and Fairy Glow would be alternate realities, from each other, and from modern settings that takes place in a world like ours. Same with something like Shaman Emperor, which is a urban fantasy setting, and Final Treasure, which is a completely different world and setting. Shaman Emperor and Reaper would be parallel worlds. Rias paused. Actually, both series can feasibly be part of the same world. They both use spirit energy under different names. I mean, sure, and the plots won't overlap since one is taking place in the living world, and the other is in the afterlife. But there is nothing like the nature spirits in the Reaper setting, Issei said as finished the Ritsuka figurine, and he began to coloring on the figurine of Scathack. The Scathack figurine was posed in a casual stance, facing someone with a smirk, while holding her red spear behind her. The empties, probably? Rias said, but from her frown, she started to see the crossover theory wouldn't work. Those are all enemies, and nature spirits are neutral for the most part. Also, no dead soul ever turned into an empty in Shaman Emperor. Maybe cursed spirits, but they just reversed to normal dead souls after getting beaten up. Issei said, I was sure the two settings were more compatible. Maybe we can say because none of the shaman tournament stuff have anything to do with the afterlife, that's why we don't see anything resembling it in Reaper? Rias offered a theory. Maybe. What about Shame Emperor and Katekyo Hitman Revive? Issei said, as he finished the Scat Hack figurine and started on the Nero figurine, who was posed with a large open-mouthed smile, eyes close, with one arm on her chest and another raised high. It was Nero singing. They could a same setting situation. Both use spirit energy with different terms. Rias said confidently, pretty sure the flaming will is a sort of physical energy thing. You know, like Ki from Dragso Ball. Issei thought back, smirking a little at Rias' crestfallen expression at having her idea shot down. Rias then quickly looked back up. Wait, Ki is spiritual energy, she argued. Issei furrowed his brows and thought, no? Ki is physical energy, since it only increased when the character pushed their bodies and muscles to the limit. He said back, then the entire plots involving the other world in Dragso Ball wouldn't work, since Goto and others were dead. Rias pointed out smugly. Issei raised a finger to counterpoint her, then stopped, and thought some more. I think the official explanation was Ki is life force, so maybe that makes it its own thing that can work whether the characters were alive or dead. So maybe it's a combination of physical and spiritual like in Naruto with chakra? Issei said, I'll take it. Rias nodded in acceptance. So what do we call worlds that are similar to our modern-day setting, but have different power systems, or slightly different history, but still similar to our modern world? Compatible parallel worlds that have a power system that's basically the same as ours but with a different name. And non-compatible parallel worlds that are modern settings but have significant differences. Issei offered a solution. Done! Rias agreed with a smile. She then blinked as she felt like she was missing something. Wait, what were we talking about originally? Anime? Issei said back, while trying to appear casual, but he couldn't hold back his amused smirk. Your Isekai adventure. Rias remembered, her eyes widening and shining again. So what was the setting you fell in? Were you summoned as a hero to battle the Demon King? Was it a world where you had to fight in a tournament as some certain kingdom's representative? Did you meet some Isekai goddess who gave you some OP cheat power and just let you run free? Although technically boosted gear is a cheat power without needing anything on top of it. Rias blabbered without pause. Or, you were summoned on the demon's side to fight against some corrupt goddess and her zealous xenophobic humans? Issei began to chuckle at Rias' enthusiasm and motor mouth. Rias stopped, blushing at how she acted. And no, it was none of that. Issei said through the laughs. Sorry. Calling the world you went to as a setting is probably rude and insensitive. I just meant, I wanted to know the overall situation in that world, and what did you do? She asked. No, I get it. Issei chuckled a bit more, before regaining his composure. It not so much as summoned, as by luck and circumstances, I went to that place because I owed a debt. Issei said with a soft look in his eyes. A debt? Rias asked, tilting her head. Prince Hydro. Shut up, Drake. Issei shouted, red-faced. Prince what? One could almost imagine question marks over Rias' head. Nothing. Issei waved his hands in front of himself, hoping to push away Rias' curiosity. Basic situation in that other world, well, the apocalypse already happened and mankind was dead. What? Rias cried out in shock. Then the group of survivors used their time machine, along with summoned souls of heroes from across all of history, to travel to the past and correct the deviations in history and to fight the demon gods responsible for that. So technically it was your first guess of me being summoned to defeat a demon king. Except I wasn't summoned, I willingly volunteered to go there, and the final boss was a few tiers above a demon king. Issei abridged the explanation. Please tell me more. Rias grabbed one of Issei's free hand with both of hers, as she looked at him with all her earnestness and curiosity. Her blue eyes were glowing with excitement. Literally, well, this. Issei started to show off the figurines one by one. Is Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, the 5th Roman Emperor. And this is Scathach, the Witch of Duin Scaith and Queen of the Land of Shadows. And this is Edward Teach, actually a bro. Waha, wait. I thought Emperor Nero was a man. Rias asked. Yeah, that's one of the weird mysteries of that world. Even though our history books are likely the same in everything, the mundane side at least, a lot of historical figures there surprisingly were actually women, who were just mistakenly remembered as men. Ria's expression was one of wide-eyed pure wonderment and amazement. Her mouth frozen in a wide-open smile, as she had hundreds of thoughts in her mind, but unable to voice them all at once, or choose which one to ask first. Issei started showing Rias the figurines present, and which heroic spirit they were. For the rest of their talk, Issei told her about the servants, and diverted her attention from having to tell her the events of the Grand Order. Grafia held back a sigh as she continued her duties as a Surzeka's queen and maid, which at the moment meant making sure he doesn't embarrass himself, say anything incriminating as the Satan Lucifer. Also, she had to make sure the human liquor and the magical liquor doesn't end up drunk by the wrong person. Grafia wouldn't let Gora Hayata have his bowl implode, because she wasn't paying attention. The Red Dragon Emperor sure as heaven wouldn't accept that excuse. I'm supposed to be the most powerful person in the underworld, managing hell. Not capital H hell, different place. Just as Surzex tried to gesture with his hands to make a sphere, failed, and reached for his bottle and pour himself another drink. Location: Nation of Devils. The official name is technically Hell. Small h, but we call it the underworld, preposterously. Pretentiously. Grafia closed her eyes, almost in pain. Welp, at least the human is equally as drunk, that he's unlikely to remember this conversation after he blacks out. Why? Wouldn't that get confusing since, what was it, other death gods have their realm in the underworld? Gora asked curiously. Because we can. And yes. Surzex and Gora giggled. As the youth says, we're dunking on the other factions, by attaching the underworld majorly to us. The Lucifer said as he took a drink of his wine. I think they call it styling nowadays. Gora pointed out. Like barbers? Surzex blinked in confusion. Gora shrugged and poured himself another cup of sake. For a while the two sat in a peaceful silence. Grafia hoped they'd start falling asleep. I just am arguing and reining in all the old devils, the old Satan's guys when they show up to make noise. Worse, they do it officially, so I can't just kick their asses. And a melancholic look entered Surzek's eyes. It's been 500 years since the Civil War. It feels like nothing we did helped the new generation, or changed things, or made them grow different. The children born back then mostly grew up to be exactly like their parents, predecessors, ancestors, and other tours. He said with a heaviness in his tone that made an ugly feeling of self-disappointment grab at Grafia's heart. She had hoped that with her duties she would have eased her husband's duty and loads, yet it seemed they still weigh on him. And in this era, I have both a sister and a son. What if I fail them too? He said. Rias has a lot of responsibility, but if she's free from it, then Millikas will have to carry it instead. I don't want to burden my child like that. But I also don't want my Ria to suffer. Who knows? You won't until time passes, Gora said, taking a shot of his sake cup. So do nothing? Surzex leaned aside to rest his cheek against his palm. There was a more focused look hidden in his eyes. No, of course not. Gora chuckled, not noticing anything about his drink mate's subtle demeanor. His drinking companion was the devil after all. You just do your best. Time passes and you'll see the result, he said. Self-reflection every now and then is good to make sure you're still doing right, focusing on what's important, but too much is just self-misery indulgence. Surzex flinched like he was struck with a verbal arrow. Heh. He let out a weak chuckle. I'm old, Gora continued. Half a century from now, and I won't even be here. His tone wasn't disparaging or deprecating, but calm acceptance. I sometimes forget how small a human lifespan is. Surzex commented. Ha! If you're that old, then shouldn't you be wise enough to not have your worries? Gora said jokingly. Haha, well, with age knowledge accumulates. Wisdom, however, Sirzex sighed with a chuckle. It doesn't always come when needed, he said. Probably why humanity had so many philosophers. You were always closer to death than any other race. Well, as someone halfway there, let me tell you something, Gora said, trying to sound seriously, but the flush on his face, and him pointing to Sirzek's left wasn't helping his point. And if you tell anyone, I'll completely deny it. My lips are sealed. Sirzek smiled. Gora looked serious for a moment as he stared at his cup. Looking at the sake but not drinking it. The life we currently live is a disgrace. Gora Haidu spoke, and the two devils found themselves blinking at his odd words. Not issei, or other kids. But us, the adults. He began. We work our whole lives to provide for our families, to the point that we can't act as fathers for our children, giving away precious time, in return for meaningless things like money, or honor. Even our health. All that effort for something nebulous like the economy, or the nation. And then at old age, when we're finally done, we can rest, and take our benefits. But where do those benefits come from, one might ask? Why, from the hard work and effort of your young. And that's how it works. Gora looked up to meet Sirzek's eyes. The future generation is constantly working to pay for the comfort and the luxury of us, the old relics. And then their future children sacrifice themselves for theirs. What kind of life is that? Are we humans? Or are we vampires sucking on the life force of our own children? Gora-san? Sirzek blinked. In a single day, my boy lost his life, regained it, and aged far more than I can comprehend. Gora said, much to the two devils' confusion. Odds are, if I was there, nothing would have changed. Or maybe if I was present from much earlier, then he would have walked a different path. He sighed. Odds are, in a decade, maybe 2 or 3, the current system will break down. Maybe it should. From that, hopefully we can learn and make something different. Gora drank another cup, and then let go of the glass. The thing is, at some point you have to make a choice. Either devour the future for your comfortable present, or sacrifice yourself for your children's future. Gora smiled at Sirzek. You devils are old. You don't have to live like that, but if you will live for that many years, then you have a duty to learn from history and time. You say wisdom doesn't always come, then you're gonna have to search for it then. Toughen up your future generations, he frowned. Not to carry the burden of their ancestors, but to be able to face the world and forge their own future. Your sister has a lot to deal with. Train her. The heirs of the pillar families are growing up to be copies of their parents. Teach them. It's not that simple. Sirzek said back sadly. You're strong. Use your strength, otherwise what's the point of having it? Gora plainly said. Some awareness started returning to Sirzek's eyes, pushing away the haze of drunkenness. He didn't intend to take the humans, Gora's words, so seriously, but he found himself doing so. It would be abusing my position. He argued, family comes first. Gora shrugged. Just make up some bullshit. Lord Lucifer cannot. Grafia felt like she let this talk, that was starting to maybe turn into something dangerous from inebriation, went on for too long, yet a gesture from her king told her to stop. And so she did. It's irresponsible. I'm supposed to set an example, be a role model. Sirzek argued, protect the things that you love. Isn't that an example to follow? Gora offered with a cheeky grin. Sirzek found himself chuckling. You got me there. I'm not saying to be cruel, or be a despot to let your desires run wild ruling you, Gora said. But you kinda seem like you lost the picture of why you originally started. Sirzek froze. You're older now. You know more now. He continued. Just stop, take a breath, look again at what you want and need, then go do it. He said with sage-like nod. Like if your wife wants BDSM and you want lovey-dovey, do both. Sirzek's jaw dropped, like he awakened to a revelation. Grafia felt her eyebrow twitch. Now! Gora slammed his hands on the table as I stood up, wobbled a bit, then righted himself. I'm gonna go find my wife, get that French-made outfit that we have in the closet for a decade now, that is definitely not her size anymore, and completely ruin it. Excuse me? And then Gora left, like a man on a mission. Honey, French maids. Grafia thought, rolling her eyes, hiding her disgust. How fake. Serzex sat down quietly and thought. Grafia, after a sigh, started cleaning up the cups and putting away the bottles, putting the magical rum in a pocket dimension. Grafia. Serzex spoke behind her. She turned around, only to see her king standing right behind her, grabbing her by the waist, and deeply kissing her. Grafia blinked as she felt the kiss and Serzex's energy wash over her, almost acting like an aphrodisiac. She easily pushed it down with some effort this time. She knows that's just Lord Lucifer showing her some affection, but they were on a schedule and dallied enough. Teleportation magic was cast. Serzex had brought them back to his office back in their Lucifer castle in the underworld. My lord, she said seriously, as she knew while his affection would be a lovely time, he had his duties, and she had to be the voice of reason, keeping him on the straight and narrow. You have meeting after the Haida, is it? I have managed to reshuffle them around, but you must, Grafia, Serzex said with a commanding voice, shocking the strongest queen into silence. He looked at her straight into her eyes, some drunkenness still lingering in his own, but a bit of focus and power was visible in his irises. I love you. Bend over. The words struck her heart. The command struck her nethers, and then without waiting for her to respond, the devil turned his wife around, and bent her over his desk, throwing the very important papers away. Damn it! That was so much stuff she'd have to clean. Yet Grafia couldn't be wetter. Welp, it's finally fucking happening. Her heart was thundering in her chest. Grafia tried to keep her smile off her face, since she was supposed to be disapproving of Lord Lucifer's chaotic behavior. The stoic mask shattered under a minute. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Silver W. King for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. If you like to hear adult version of this and other stories, I'll give you link of my Patreon. See you in the next video. Goodbye.